for Dan to say.
I'm recording right now, so go right ahead.
All right, I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Shaftsbury Select Board for February 25th, 2013. This is a special meeting, and we are also having our public information meeting beginning at 7 o'clock on the bond issue that's building the new town garage at the just next to the transfer station. So, let's see. Just want to check one thing. We're going to break about 10 minutes before the public information meeting, which begins at 7. Everybody's got a different watch, so when I say it's 10 of 7, just take my word for it this time. Last time it was, oh, I've got 6:53, I've got 6:47. No, leading this group has been fun. All right, so, announcements, Billy?
Nothing.
Karen?
No.
Okay, Carl?
No.
Craig?
Nothing.
Okay, I've got a couple. McDonald's, or MSK Engineering applied for our wastewater water supply permit for the proposed garage facility at the transfer station, and the permit was approved. And that's going to be forwarded on to Tyler Yandau to share with the DRB. And we also got our letter that the site is, the site plans in terms of the road access and stuff are considered suitable as far as the Shaftsbury Fire Department is concerned. So those two letters are going to come in. Those things will probably go together as a package. Once, I think we are due one more, but that's moving forward very nicely. Jim Secord deserves a lot of credit for following up on that. The other thing is, I'd like to take, make sure we take one item out of order, if it's okay with you. I wanted to begin tonight the conversation about providing a preference to local subcontractors. If we incorporate some sort of policy or procedure for giving a local preference, we need to put that in the bid specifications. Jim Secor has some ideas about that, how it can be done effectively. I'm not assuming that we're going to do it. I support the idea if we can do it fairly and cost effectively, but I'd like to begin the conversation tonight and get some input. Jim Secor will be here at 6 o'clock or 6:15. So is it okay with the board if we take that up at that time?
Yes.
It'd be under other business. Okay. Does any member of the public wish to comment on anything not appearing on the agenda? Okay. Does any member of the board have a conflict of interest with anything appearing on the agenda?
No. No.
No.
Okay. Okay, the first item of business is the DRB interviews. Billy, do you want to just call whoever we should interview first, and we'll just go through? Kathy?
Kathy's the only one I see here right now.
Okay, so we'll get a chair.
That's easy. There's a chair right here.
Right there is great.
That's right.
Dan, what's the situation with mics right now? Our sound for the camera?
Just using the microphones being picked up on the camera right now. In a couple of minutes, this will all be set up.
Okay, so we should speak clearly.
Very clearly,
Loudly?
very loudly.
Okay.
You more than others.
Okay. Got it. All right, Kathy. Let's see. Would you tell us why you're interested in the appointment to the DRB?
Sure. Well, about 30-plus years ago, when I purchased my first home, I found out that it was a light industry office. And it was a residential neighborhood, kind of an older neighborhood, but some new homeowners were just starting to purchase homes there. And found out that there was an industrial developer that wanted to put an industrial development right on the parcel next door to us. So the neighbors and I got together, and I went into the town to discuss with them how it got zoned light industry office. And it was explained to me it was part of a master plan, et cetera. And through a lot of meetings with the town board, and we were able to get it changed back to residential. And actually, that was how I met my husband. He was the town planner. So it really boded quite well with me. And so I've had definitely an interest in that over the years. There's no question about it. And when I first applied, I thought it would be really good to be on the board. And then I had second thoughts, and I thought, well, you know, why don't I remain an outsider and be a citizen advocate and participate from the outside? And it was really very interesting. My husband has a lot of planning books, and I happened to look at a few articles that he suggested that I read. And one was about public participation versus being on a board. And I saw that, and one particular article was from UCLA on development planning. And it was really very interesting. It said that it's good to be on a public, certainly, and be an advocate, but really change a lot of times in municipal government takes place from the board, allows people to participate more and makes the board more transparent by the membership itself. And that you could be an advocate on the outside, but a lot of times to make change, the board has to decide that they want to actually listen to the public. And it's really a misconception, like the open meeting laws and things like that. It's very difficult for a board to really be open-minded, and I really think it's important. And one example is, we worked for 9 months with the Planning Commission on the development of the composting type bylaws, and I have never seen such an open forum and open dialogue. It was truly collaborative. And I really think that that's a very important aspect of town government in all boards. And at first there was a lot of storming, as group formed, and then there was forming and then norming, and we really got a lot accomplished. And I really have to say it was a truly collaborative process. So then after I went through, I thought about all of this. I read the articles that my husband had given me to kind of help me balance the issues. And then I decided to come back and reapply. And then I spoke to Bill and let him know when you had asked Bill to check with all the former candidates.
Okay, let me ask you about the 10,000-pound gorilla in the room, which is that when the composting issue came up, you were very outspoken about your point of view about composting. Mm-hmm. And now we have a bylaw that permits composting in our town. So there'd be concern that if some activity came to town for which the town was not ready, and it's allowed under our bylaws, could you separate out what you as a property owner want from what the bylaws allow?
The bylaws have a set of basic, the bylaws have some basic standards that they follow, but there's a lot of gray area in the bylaws, and you're actually is how the interpretation would be in a gray area, and could I be objective, if I'm understanding you correctly.
Right.
In the gray area.
Could you set your feelings as a property owner aside from what you think the bylaws provide?
Well, I think I would go to the town plan line. I would certainly look to see what the town plan had as far as any structure. certainly can be objective. There's no question in my mind that I can't be objective. I've had to look at things throughout my career that you had to look very objectively at. I'm a Six Sigma, which is a statistical analysis credential, green belt, in that you have to analyze data. And maybe some people think that, oh, this is the right way to do it. There's no question about it. But then when you look at the data and you analyze the whole situation, another way may be totally a better way to do something. And I think I'm so accustomed to looking at data and then drawing from that data to find the conclusion that would be best. And sometimes additional information would be necessary if it's not something that's in our bylaw. You would have to send the person back to investigate additional avenues in that.
Well, let me take it a different way. The town plan cannot overrule the bylaws. That when the DRB needs and makes a decision, it has to be based on just what's in the bylaws. They can't really go back to the town plan and try to reconcile differences.
Mm-hmm.
And if the bylaws specifically said there was an activity in there that's allowed that you disagreed with, could you grant a permit?
I mean, if it was absolutely allowed, for example, home occupation in RR, in the rural residential section, that's an allowable use as commercial use. So, you have to follow bylaws. I'm accustomed to doing that. I was working with my husband, looking at the bylaws, looking in New York, they call them zoning laws, but, the same thing. Looking and interpreting and making sure that they're fair, that you fairly apply them to all parties. That they're not just applied one way for one group of people and another way to another group of people, that they're applied equally to all.
Okay. Just one other question.
That's very important.
Just the other question is, some applicants find that if they have to go to 5, 6, 7 meetings, that the process is such a grind in and of itself that discourages people from either complying with the bylaws, playing by the rules, or they get exhausted and just don't decide not to engage in the activity. Do you have any thoughts about how you balance the need for gathering facts and at the same time making the process friendly enough so that people who want to get a permit can get it?
Yeah.
Can you comment on that?
Sure. Actually, I talked to Megan about this some time ago. When Tyler first came on board, he had said that he had gotten the packets together for the DRB members at least 10 days before the DRB meeting, endorse it so that they would have their materials in advance of the meeting. And there was some concern that that would be, if the members had their packets 10 days or more before, this would run towards ex parte discussions, etc. And in speaking further, I was talking to Megan, and I said, no, this way the individual members of the DRB can open those set of plans on their dining room table and say, oh, the setback isn't met on this area, and they can actually review all the documents in advance. I have to tell you, from being at almost every DRB meeting for the last almost 2 years, a lot of times the DRB members get their packets right then and there. They haven't seen the applications, and it really does take a lot of time, and they have to send people away. So what I had suggested is, to Megan and Tyler had also suggested, is that they get their packets at least 10 days before the meetings, so that each member of the DRB can make a list of the issues that they have, so that when they go to the first meeting with the document, they have all of the information that they can say, okay, I see that on the east side of the property, I only see a 35-foot setback. It requires a 50-foot setback. Are you planning on applying for a variance? Because I don't see a variance application for that 15-foot of setback. Or I see that you have a steep slope on the west side of your property, and you expect to have a highway access at that point. How are you planning on handling that? I don't see the culvert on your plan. And you can list all of the items so that when you go to that first meeting with the applicant, you have everything lined up. each of the members can have, and each member can maybe see different things from different vantage points when they're reviewing the plans. Bring that to the meeting so things can really be done in a very organized and professional manner. It would be better for the applicant, actually. It really would be so much better. And I haven't discussed it, and Tyler did mention that when he first came on board.
Okay,
You know.
thanks. Billy, do you have questions?
Yeah, I've got two questions for you, Kathy. One, you had talked about the struggle and decision about how you can make an impact, so to speak, whether you can do, which side of the table you can better make an impact on. Sitting on the DRB on a quasi-judicial board, I think as Lon spoke about a little bit before, your own personal feelings kind of have to kind of leave and
Compartmentalize.
that's a great way to put it, compartmentalized, and basically your feelings are replaced by the bylaws. So how do you see yourself making more of an impact on something that you seem to care about on, say, this side of the table, where all of a sudden your feelings are compartmentalized and are no longer something that you can really consider?
I think making the difference, though, would be making sure the public feels that they are being listened to. If public do not feel that they're being listened to, it really can get messy. I mean, democracy can be messy, but it can really get messy. People get angry, people can get hostile if they feel that they're being ignored and if their viewpoints aren't being heard. So I think that's where I feel like really can make a difference. Having been there and been in that situation and having had the frustration, I think it's really important that the public are heard and and I think it is improving. But I still think that making sure that all of the public are heard, and whether you're sworn in as a giving testimony or whether you're a public that has a question that needs clarification, I think both need to be in a professional manner and having people feel part of the decisions that are made for the town. They may have absolutely no party status in an application, but they may want to ask a procedural question, and I think it's very important for the public to feel that they can. And that's one of the things that I certainly foster, that they would be allowed to ask things such as procedural questions, even if they have no party status and cannot give testimony. I think it's really important. And also, and I talked to Megan about this also, and I talked to the DRB about it when I interviewed with them, but I think it's really important that at the beginning of the meeting, some people are not familiar with the DRB processes and that they are quasi-judicial, and I think it's important to let the applicants kind of learn the process when they first come in, so that they're informed on how it should, what they can expect, that, that they'll be taking testimony, but if you have a question, or a procedural question, and you're not going to be giving testimony because you're not working on this specific application, we will be taking questions, etc.
Okay. And then the other question that I had is, as Lon mentioned before, you've been pretty vocal on some issues in the past, and been to quite a few DRB meetings, and I've been to quite a few DRB meetings and seen a lot of things. Not recently, but in the past couple of years. And one of the questions I have is, we've seen, there's definitely been some contentious moments in meetings between the public and the board. And I'd like to ask you, when things do get tense, what do you see as the difference between the role, so the responsibility of the board and the responsibility of the public when things get difficult in the meeting?
Well, I think that the chair has to set an example for the tone of the meetings, and I think that, as I explained before, I think it's very important to for the chair to say that everyone would be given an opportunity to ask questions, and we ask that you don't interrupt each other, etc. Setting like the framework, almost having like a preamble that they set before every public hearing. I think it would be really very helpful. And I think that certainly the public needs to act professionally at the meetings. I never spoke out of turn at any of the meetings. I may have been outspoken, but I never spoke out of turn. I never was unprofessional. I spoke passionately, that's for sure. But I think that, again, in democracy, that's how a lot of changes have been made in our country. You know, and even at the Planning Commission bill, I mean, things were very high, I would say it was very difficult the first few meetings with the Planning Commission, but then things just really settled in, and Chris really did a tremendous job of making sure that we all felt like we were all part of the process. And again, I think that that's the chair's responsibility, members of the DRB's responsibility, to maintain professional demeanor throughout all contentious, non-contentious, doesn't matter, hearings.
Okay, thank you, that's all I have.
Karen?
I think actually some of the questions I have been answered in the questions that these two guys asked, so I appreciate your
Great.
responses.
Mine is just kind of in general. You mentioned that you have background with Six Sigma, which I'm familiar with that process or that mindset.
Right.
Could you elaborate a little bit further maybe on what industry you've worked in and then maybe what some of your professional experiences? You explained the background with your husband and zoning and things that you've done in the past, but more professionally, what does some of your professional experience bring to the table?
Sure. Well, I have a master's in public administration, and I am a registered nurse. I have, God, it's going on 40 years I'm a nurse. I retired as director of nursing at Good Samaritan Hospital in Hudson Valley. And that's where we actually got my Six Sigma. And what we used our Six Sigma analysis for, it could be from issues of patient complaints, really how to deal with a patient complaint, all the way down to clinical issues, how to deal with medication errors, and how to actually find what the root causes were for those issues, and then looking at those root causes and then trying to make quick fixes, which are quick changes, or looking at larger changes. For example, one of the things that we did, they also have at Southern Vermont, is that we instituted a medication administration system that's computer-based, where it's barcoded. So you barcode the patient's ID band, and then you barcode the medication to make sure that the medications match, so that the patient is getting the right medication at the right time, the right dose, etc. And we implemented that. Part of it was because of the medication errors, and you really don't see, there's a human error factor constantly in medication errors. And with the computer-generated medication administration record, also the barcoding, which is on the medication record, on the patient's ID, and on the medication, you can really eliminate, I would say, 99% of medication errors. Unfortunately, nurses are very smart birds, and they know how to get around some of the systems. No matter the best system, always has a way of getting around it. But I have my master's in public administration. So.
Thank you. That was
And I work with my husband for the last, since about 2007. He moved his office out of a big practice, and I've been helping him, and I cover meetings for him, etc.
Thank you.
Carl?
Also, I think most of the questions that I would have already been covered, but I do have one. Since much of the contentious issues in the past on the DRB have involved whether or not there's been a conflict of interest that required somebody to recuse themselves, what would your understanding of a conflict of interest be that would require you perhaps, or anyone for that matter, in the same role, to recuse themselves from a matter that's before the board?
Well, I understand that the Select Board is now working on a conflict of interest policy. I really think that a conflict of interest has to be where, you know, and again, I can't quote the actual statute, Carl, but there's a Vermont statute that pretty much spells it out. It's how many orders of a relationship with the individual, if it's your son, your daughter, your nephew, etc. If you can have monetary gains from the specific issue at hand, in other words, if by you participating in this, if this were to be approved, you could have monetary gains in that approval process. That would certainly be a conflict of interest. And if one of our relatives would have owned the property in hand that was being discussed. And there's a list of several others.
I'm familiar with those.
Yeah,
I'm more, and those are, if you will, black and white kind of situation.
Yeah.
I'm more concerned about what your thoughts are when they're not black and white. Typically, when someone perhaps maybe yourself has worked on a matter and your involvement was very, very visible, you may have participated in some decision-making process or something of that sort. Would you consider that a basis to recuse yourself from a matter?
You know, if I felt I should recuse myself, I certainly would, but I mean, I don't have, I'd have to see the exact situation. If you can give me an example of what you,
Well,
because I really don't have any interest in any
I
other
guess
properties.
maybe the point would be better put if I say if there's an appearance of a conflict. You hypothetically were involved in many very visible issues in the town.
Mhm.
You may not have made a particular decision on something, or maybe you did. Maybe what you did may have influenced some decision by a decision maker. And that matter then comes up as related to the DRB. Is that something, if somebody said, you know, I think Ms. Jenslaw has a conflict here because she was very, very vocal and so, I don't believe that she's able to give an unbiased opinion in this, and you recognize that your involvement was correct, but you don't, what would you do in that type of situation?
Well, I really have to see what the case was, and
Let me give an example.
Yeah.
Say there's another compost facility,
Mhm.
and you're serving as the alternate because of an absence, and a member of the public gets up and said, well, you spoke at meetings saying we should not have composting facilities in this town because there's no place where it would be appropriate, and they have so many objectionable side effects, such as aerosols and the like. And that person says, how could you be objective about this application based on the fact you were arguing that we should have no composting in this community whatsoever?
Well, I didn't say that. I never said no.
I'm not, I know how this works, but
Yeah.
that's the hypothetical. So
Okay.
the public perception out there is that you've already taken a very public position against the very application that's before the board.
Well, I have to say that I took the Master Composter course myself this last fall.
Mhm.
So I am very pro-composting. So and I also worked for 9 months with the Planning Commission to develop a very, very good bylaw. So in that case, I would have to say that I feel that I'm objective based on all of the work that was accomplished in a collaborative fashion with the Planning Commission. And I think that would have to be evidenced. If someone felt that that a person wanted, I don't think that you just need to remove yourself from a conflict of interest unless there really is a conflict of interest. And I understand what you're saying about perceived conflict of interest, but if it's perceived or if it's not really there, and I don't think I would, in that specific scenario, I think if a composting facility came in for approval, as provided by our bylaws, I would have no problem doing a review of the application at all. In fact, I feel the expertise from working so long with the Planning Commission, I'm pretty knowledgeable about the bylaws and also the state regulations at A&R. So I think that I have good objective knowledge base on it, actually. So I don't think that in that case, I mean, if the rest of the planning board, if we were to discuss it, I think it also would be something that the DRB would have to discuss if the other members, if we all concurred, if we all wanted to discuss it. I think it should be done in the public eye. And I think that if there were concerns of other members, we could have an open discussion in front of the public in that situation.
And
and to see how it would come out.
and if the majority were concerned that it would become a distraction and maybe erodes the public confidence, could you gracefully step aside in that one instance?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. But, you know, again, absolutely. But I think it's something that should be done in the open eye of the public and, again, with discussions with the whole DRB.
I'm sorry, Carl, but
No,
I
that's
just.
fine, thanks. That's adequate. Thank
Okay,
you.
great, thank you, Kathy. Michael? Is he next?
Yeah, he's the only one.
Okay. How are you tonight, Michael?
Well, thanks.
Are the microphones working, Dan?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so, why, Michael? I'm sorry. So why do you want to be on the DRB?
It's a good question. Civic duty, bring an open mind and fairness to the board. As you know, I had some difficulties in the past with permitted activities that were, I think, due to, allowed to carry on due to bias on the board, various boards, and select board included. So I'm familiar with what a citizen has to do to defend himself against prejudice of a board. Not necessarily negative prejudice, but positive prejudice for permits. So I think I bring a fairly unique perspective in that regard, and I had to defend myself and my interests, and I felt quite alone in front of various boards in the past. Almost like Kathy was saying, I ended up educating myself in a lot of ways with help from other people. So I think it should be a fair process, and I'm not saying that I'm trying to only help people who are against something happening, but I bring that with me, and I don't mind telling you.
How do you envision giving an applicant or an abutting property owner a different experience than what you have? How do you do that?
Well, I think you have to clearly pay attention to, if you can, relevant state law, state ordinances, and what is in the letter of the law of the zoning bylaws.
Is there anything about how you would conduct yourself that would give those folks a different experience than you had?
I think I would, first of all, make sure that all of my communications were during meetings, not ex parte, that the record was open for anything that was brought before the board. And really it amounts to, I believe, paying attention to your best fair interpretation of the zoning bylaws. I don't think it's philosophical decisions that are being asked to be made by DRB members. I think you have to be able to let people speak and realize that people have feelings, and you're going to have to, let them wash over the room, but that, pick out the relevant, appropriate information from what people have to say, but give people a chance to say it.
Thanks, Mike. Carl?
Can you elaborate a little bit for me on your experience that you said that was kind of defensive with regard to your property ownership, so I can get a better feel for what you're referring to, because I really don't know what that is?
Okay, very briefly, someone was allowed to erect and operate a garbage transfer station with open doors, 250 feet from my bedroom window. Okay. That says it all right there. It was not a good idea from my point of view.
Thank you. Any questions?
Okay, great.
I'll pose the same question that I posed for Kathy, just a little bit of, for the public that may not know, a little bit about your professional background, you know, what you do, how in some of the experiences you've had, the one you gave is a good example because you've been there and been involved and needed to learn, but other things maybe you bring professionally or personally that you might feel advantageous to the board process.
Well, I don't know, you're fairly new in the area as well. I was the town tree warden for well over 20 years, and I was involved in dealing with people who had opinions about town trees. In particular, this tree's on my property, it's gonna kill my house. The town should do something about it. And I thought I was fair in figuring out whether it was actually in the town right of way, whether it posed a hazard to a particular property or to the town, whether the hazard was something that was caused by the homeowner or whether it had been caused by, Father Time. And I thought I dealt fairly with people. I don't think I caused a whole lot of rancor in the way I dealt with things like that. I don't have a lot of professional experience. I'm very impressed with what I heard Kathy talking about, her professional experience in dealing with difficult situations. But I have run my own business since the early 70s and deal with homeowners and institutions on a regular basis as an arborist. So I don't know, that fleshes it in.
Yeah, it does. That's kind of what I was looking for, a little bit of the background, and you gave some good examples. Thank you.
Okay. Karen?
Michael, you're applying for the alternate position. And I'm curious, and I didn't ask Kathy this question, but how do you see yourself in that position? In other words, would you see your tendency to attend meetings on a regular basis, to be familiar, or wait until you might be called on, or how do you see yourself in that role?
I would like to take whatever training is offered for BRB members. I think that, the League of Cities and Towns provides it. And I'm not sure what exactly the position of alternate involves, whether it means you could be called up at any point during a particular application process, or if it means that you'd be called for a particular application. I'm not sure if you're required to be aware of what's going on to every case, every application. I would do what it's required to be, an aware participant. I don't know if I would promise to make every meeting, but the intention is to be what an alternate is supposed to be. I'm unclear about the specs.
Well, when you would start a hearing, you may have to go to every meeting until the matter's concluded.
Oh,
So,
yeah, that I would expect.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else, Karen?
No.
Billy?
I've just got one question, Mike, because just about everything I thought of had been asked already. But obviously, there's been some concern over past time about attendance at DRB meetings. And actually, in an effort to increase the probability of quorums, we recently reduced the size of the board. A concern was raised to the select board just regarding potential candidates and making sure they're going to be committed to meetings, and if somebody was not available for an interview when we thought they were going to be here, would we be able to count on that person being at meetings? So I just want to give you a chance to explain to the board any situations that may have come up why you weren't at your previously scheduled interview. to alleviate that concern, hopefully.
Sure. I forgot. It's the best way I can say why I didn't come for my other interview. And, you know, I was, at that point, I thought I was standing for a full-time seat on the board, and I didn't actually see the need, since so many of us dropped our applications for the seats that we thought were gonna be open, and, you know, the board, the night we dropped our applications, the board, prior to that, reduced the size of the board. And I thought we had some good candidates. So, but I didn't intentionally forget, but, you know, I did forget. But I don't have a habit of not showing up for my responsibilities.
Okay, so that was the exception, not the norm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Mike's been pretty consistent.
Yeah.
When he gets involved in an issue, he's.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to give him
Sure.
a chance to answer that concern.
I do have a good record of attendance at the environmental issues. We have had our
He sure
meetings.
does, I know, we need to have a meeting.
Yeah, I'm there.
I know you are, I know you are.
Anything else, Bill?
That's all I have.
Thanks.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Appreciate your interest. Okay, that's it for the interviews. The next item on the agenda is to review the financial reports. Bill, do you mind coming up? Sure. That'd be great.
Here's this afternoon's version of the budget.
I've got it.
You email it, Carl, I don't know.
No, I was,
You're on.
Yeah, does that?
Carrie?
The comfy chair's right there, Bill.
You're gonna be a trouble case
Radio.
That wasn't.
Bill, do you want to summarize where we are?
Yes, thank you, Lon. First of all, I believe everyone has a copy of the Period 8 year-to-date budget status report. Just looking through it, the big picture first, our revenues are about 91+% of budget. We anticipate we'll have some more delinquent tax collections, and we expect the fourth quarter's highway aid coming in. There are some other smaller items in that number, things like fines and dog licenses, and that's pretty much it. Those are the big numbers anyway. We anticipate that we should be approximately equal to our budgeted revenue by the end of the fiscal year. On the expense side, again, we're pretty close to budget at this point, trying to adjust for seasonality. We have, as you look through this, we're approximately 2/3 of the way through the fiscal year, and so would expect to see generally that we would have expended about 2/3 of our budget. In some cases, we have expenses that are loaded into the first part of the year, and so the percentage may be higher than that. Just going through the various categories, administration, as you can see, we're about 70% of budget, with the various elements of that presented above. Tracking, you can see where we're tracking with expenses. The major items are certainly within the parameters of where we expect them to be at this point in time. Things like insurance, for example, we pay the premiums at the beginning of the year for our liability and casualty insurances, and so we're at 104% of budget on that. In terms of Cole Hall, we're expended about half of what we had budgeted at this point in time. We're looking at fuel usage to be sure that we're correctly allocating our fuel charges for that. The elections and vital statistics, the town clerk, again, pretty much on budget with the exception of professional services being over a bit, but we're talking about $200 over. Overall, she's actually less than 2/3 of her expenditures at this point in time. Payrolls, accounting and payroll, We're about right there, we're at 68%. Auditing is at 85%, and we've got the town report in there, which is an expense that will not recur in this fiscal year.
That's about half of it, isn't it? For that group, the auditors,
That's over half?
That's over half, really.
Yeah,
It's about
so-
85, 86%.
Yeah, so-
But a big piece, as far as the percentage of the total budget, yes, it is over half.
so, yeah, they're right on track.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they are. And let's see, delinquent tax collector is doing really well this year, where his FICA expense is higher than budget because his collections are more than, we don't really budget collections, but he's been doing very well and has collected quite a bit this year. The listers are at about 48%. As you can see, professional services, which are the services of Jim Boyle, are being used more, and it's being compensated by less expenses on the part of the listers for wages. So total general government, we're at about 64% of budget at this point in time.
Good, perfect.
We're pretty close.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, very good. Public safety, as you can see, we're about 45% of budget at this point in time. The animal control officer typically bills for her compensation at the end of the fiscal year, so that's a little bit of a distortion there. Emergency management, relatively small numbers, but pretty much where it should be. Fire department, we're looking at about 66% of budget. Normally the chief's stipend's paid at the end of the fiscal year. Some of the other categories, as you can see, reflect the timing of when payments are made. But overall, the fire department is right on track. The fire warden, we have, I guess you have a ballot item, an agenda item later this evening to deal with the fire warden's truck. And so we haven't we haven't taken any revenue in from the reserve fund, nor have we expended anything at this point in time. So at this point in time, the fire warden has spent very little against the budget. Law enforcement, as you can see, sheriff services are at about 60% of budget. And total public safety, 55%. A big contribution to that is the fact that the truck has not been expensed at this point in time. In terms of highway administration, we're at about 62% of budget, and I'd note that we're still working with Pay Data, and Margie's, I know, doing a lot of analysis on this to capture more accurately the overtime wages that are currently appearing in crew wages.
It should be around a $5,000 to $6,000 figure. And it's been rolled up into wages above.
Okay, but even at $5,000, now that we're approaching the 1st of March town meeting, we're in great shape.
Very good shape.
Excellent work, Terry.
And this is a transfer between line items, it's not incremental cost.
Right.
So we're doing very well there. In terms of highway construction and maintenance, you can see we're at about 84%. And part of that is paving costs that were not budgeted. That's a fairly large number, $58,000. The remaining items, salt is approaching, as we go through the winter season, salt is approaching 84% of budget. And that's a difficult one. If we could forecast the winter with accuracy, we'd be in the wrong business, I guess. We should be doing that.
Well, to be,
Vegas, right.
To be fair, the mild winters are more demanding of salt than the really cold winters, because that if you have freezing and thawing, you have to go back out there and ice it, because once it thaws, the ice is all at the bottom, and it freezes again, and you gotta go out and put more material in.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
I'm not surprised.
Highway equipment maintenance, we're at about 73% of budget at this point in time. And you can see the various individual pieces of equipment depicted there. And that includes gasoline and diesel. Going on to the highway garage expense, you can see the various categories, and we've only expended about 18% of budget at this point in time. Solid waste is running well. We're at 59% of budget again, and
Can I
sure,
ask you-
please.
I'm sorry. Professional services, the 60K, I thought, and maybe I'm wrong, Mark, but were we paying for the engineering services related to the town garage planning on that line item?
Yeah, when they built for it.
Okay. So far, we just haven't been billed for the work we've done so far. Okay.
Okay. Solid waste, as I said, is about 59% of budget at this point in time. Street lights are right on track. The park is right on track, and the cemetery expenditures are actually a bit below budget. It's difficult to spread that over 12 months in any rational way, just as it occurs.
Yeah, it'll pick up once the grass starts to grow again.
Planning and development, as you can see, Development Review Board is about 36% of budget, with no major no material variances. Some of the percentages are high, but we're talking about $70 or $90 versus $50 in those percentages. Overall, we're 36%, and that's good. Planning is at about 64% of budget. Overall, we're at 54% of budget for planning and development. The appropriations that were voted have been transferred to the various organizations. The county taxes have been paid, and the transfers to reserves, with the exception of the paving reserve, are on a transfer warrant for your review tonight. We haven't made those transfers to the reserve accounts yet. And last, the debt service expenditures are a little bit higher than budgeted. We're looking at about 104% of budget there. Total expenditures at this point in time, about $1,294,000 versus a budget of $1,883,000, where that's about 68.7, 69% of budget. At the moment, we have a current excess of revenue over expenses of about $438,000, which will be consumed as we go forward.
I was just looking at the appropriations, and we have not paid the Veterans Memorial Fund yet. And I was just checking the vote, and that did get approved by the voters. So will we pay that?
Yes, when we do the transfers, we'll deal with that as well.
It looks like all the transfers have been made.
I'm sorry,
No,
the
that's a fund
transfer
transfer.
warrant.
Oh, okay, as opposed to, I see.
It's really in the wrong place in the budget.
Yeah, the transfers that have been made are they're outside organizations.
town,
as opposed to
municipal.
the town reserve funds, which are on the transfer warrant.
Yeah, we should move that next year.
I agree.
Okay, that's a good point. I hadn't thought of it that way, and it wasn't right. Okay, and then,
I might add that we are now at that point in the year where Margie and I each month will review financial position and report to you on where we see, how cash flow is going.
okay. Okay, so sometime in April.
Or March.
I'm sorry, March, yeah. Okay. All right, and on the balance sheet?
Yeah, our balance sheet is, as you can see, is strong. I mean, we have as of today, actually, about $922,000 in cash. We have another $162,000 in delinquent taxes receivable. And offsetting that, we have various liabilities, and we have $88,000 in accounts payable. which reflects expenses that are on warrants tonight. They're in the expenses here, and they're on warrants for your approval. There's also approximately $10,500 of accrual for salt and sand, which represents the cost of slips for materials that have been received but not yet invoiced, and we wanted to make sure we captured as much of that as we could. We have an obligation to the schools for the balance of the school taxes, which is about $257,000. We were able to reduce most of the interfund balances, but we have a limit on how many transfers we can make between the reserve fund and the general fund. And so we have about $11,000 of additional monies due to the general fund when you net these two numbers out.
The 36,000 gets reduced?
Yes, by 25,000. So we're really looking at about $11,400 in net receivables from the other funds. And we're looking right at the moment, we have a total fund balance of about $758,000, which, if we perform according to budget, will be reduced by the end of the year to approximately the $320,000 fund balance that we began with.
Okay, great.
Terrific.
Any questions for Bill?
No.
No.
Fantastic. Thank you, Bill.
That's great, thank you.
Nice to
Thank
know
you,
what
Bill.
we're doing.
All right, Bill, thank you.
Thank you very
You're
much.
welcome.
Thanks, Bill.
Yeah, no, that's good numbers.
So we did get a lot, 3 loads of salt today. So we're a little over.
Okay.
That's, that,
All right.
within the rest of the budget, everything good.
Will that get us through a month?
We were out 3 times in the last 2 days.
Yeah.
How many tons would you go through on trips like that?
Well, once again, we didn't have to sand last time, but we had to salt everything again last night at 5 o'clock last night.
So,
So we did again this morning.
how many tons, just guesstimate, would you go through?
In one storm, say,
Yeah.
in one storm, we'd probably go through 18 to 20 tons.
Okay.
So if we're out 3 times in the last 2 days, simple math.
Now, we didn't probably put it on, like last night, we just barely lightly put it on because we knew we were gonna go back. We just tried to open a path up in the middle of roads to make it passable. It was just, when Timmy and I did the blacktops, and that was all it was done last night, just tried to, it was snowing so hard that we put sand down, it just went gone in minutes.
Okay, this is just a short item on opening up the garage for, so people can come and see what we're actually dealing with in terms of the current facility. And Terry's generously offered to have the garage open Friday, March 1st, March 1st from 4 to 6, and then again Saturday morning from 8 to 11, so people can see what the crew has to deal with every day. And Terry will be there, and members of the select board will probably be there to talk to people about the bond issue and answer questions about that, because I think a lot of people don't like to come to public meetings and put up their hand, but if they see you at the grocery store or at the street, they don't mind a one-on-one conversation, so it really would be helpful for folks to be there and support Terry, just as Terry's supporting the work of the town and the select board to try to explain the issues to the voters. So I think we're going to be all set on that. And then I wanted to take one item out of order, and that had to do with the bid process. Jim, can you come up? The board's agreed to take it out of order. Jim Secourse with MSK Engineering. They've been doing preliminary, more than preliminary site plans, to be honest. So Friday, Jim and I were talking about the informational meeting, and then I said, you know, is there, when I've been talking to people, they say, is there any chance that the work's gonna go to local electricians and plumbers and carpenters and like? And so I asked Jim if there was a way to, a bid strategy that might be effective in giving local contractors or subcontractors an opportunity to get the work. So what did you?
What we've done at MSK in the last few years, as a matter of fact, for different local contractors, I was a general contractor for years, so I know most of the players in the local area. And they'd come in and see us and ask if projects are going out. One thing with your project, it will have to be a bonded general contractor, which is going to restrict, very restrict, the local talent that can bid on it, because there's not many bondable contractors in this area.
Why is that?
It's onerous, it's expensive. You have to have an accountant audit your books as part of the bonding process. You have to be able to put up a minimum amount of liquid assets to allow a bonding representative to even want to take you on. So you're looking at the Russells, the Bread Loaves. We've got a couple of guys that are in the area that up to a smaller amount, the Harriman Construction out of Manchester, for example. But what we have done, and we would do in your case, as a minimum, anybody that is interested, local talent, electricians, carpenters, site contractors, et cetera, we invite them to come in to our office, give them the contact information. Every time a general contractor pulls a set of plans, we'll give them a list of bidders. Another thing that the board may be able to consider, and I'm not a lawyer on the legalities of this, I believe the school boards have done this in the past. I know the hospital did for a while as well. Preferential treatment could be given to bidders that use a minimum amount of local subcontractors. It's up to the board's discretion on what that minimum amount may be. If it says, well, we want to have at least 50% within a certain radius, and we'll give preferential treatment of 5%, say. So you could take low bid, and if it's within 5%, you could exercise the right to take somebody that says, well, I'm going to use XYZ, and here's the dollar figure for those subs.
So they would, just thinking this through, when say a large contractor provides a bid, do they just bid with a price based on using local subcontractors?
We can request two bids. One, low bid, where they pick anybody they want. And it could mean you're getting a framing contractor out of Canada, you're getting a site contractor out of New Hampshire, and you're getting an electrician out of Albany. We can also say, look, we want a second bid where, as a minimum, say we take an arbitrary number of 50% of your contract costs will go to all locals within this certain radius that can perform that project. We won't tell them who to use. They're still going to be responsible for means and method and make sure the guy can really do the work. And we can ask for those two bids, and then the board at their discretion can exercise the right to take the low bid or go to one that's given local talent. And within the confines, we can also specify in there that we want to know who those local bidders are. So we're not getting a guy that's coming in with that bid and they're all out of maybe Dorset or Rutland, and he's calling those local, and we say, no, we're talking Shaftsbury, Bennington. And then it's up to the board's discretion.
So the bonded general contractor requirement is because we're accessing money through the bond bank, or what?
That is, again, up to your discretion. If you're getting federal or state funds, it's mandatory that you use a bonded contractor. We need a performance and payment bond. Town of Bennington, for example, we put in that we want a bonded contractor, but in certain cases, we'll say, all right, tell us how much we're paying for that bond, because it's a couple %. And on a $1 million project, it adds up. And they have the right to say, all right, we'll waive the bond, we're going to take this as a credit. So it's up to the towns how comfortable you are with your contract. Normal towns on the size of this project would ask for performance and payment bond to protect yourself.
Okay.
Can I ask you a question?
So it's not actually required,
Not that
but
I'm-
it's recommended.
definitely recommended,
Yes.
but I'm not sure how the legal end of your bonding system works
Right.
and where you're getting the bond from. They may, I don't know if they may
Maybe.
require it as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Carl?
I want to understand what you're saying. The performance and payment bond, I'm with you. That would be expected in this type of situation. But from a performance payment bond from a general contractor, what is your explanation why we could not specify that they will use locals, first tier or second tier subs or material men?
You can. But what I'm saying, as a taxpayer in Shaftsbury, I'd want to see both those numbers. Because I would, if the low bid is X and we're paying 20% of premium to get all local subs and vendors, that maybe is not the best investment for the town. Does that make sense, Carl?
Yeah, I guess it makes sense. But I mean, there are so many types of contracts out there that have preferential treatments for small business,
Yep.
for women-owned businesses, for Native American businesses, and it's considered a matter of public policy that regardless of the additional cost, it's beneficial for a public policy reason to allow what would otherwise be perhaps lower prices to go to, if you will, disadvantaged businesses. And there's even the inner hub situation for inner cities. So I understand your point that maybe taxpayers in Shaftsbury would want to see both. I think it may get a little complicated if you start looking for both. And I think perhaps there's an explanation by the board, if the board were so inclined, as to why we wanted to limit it to locals as a matter of public policy, town policy, that we would only have bids, again, 25% of all material men or first-tier subs or second-tier tubs shall be within 10 miles of Shaftsbury. I think we have a lot of room to play with that.
Yeah. And I've done it on a couple of cases, though, where we've asked for two separate bids. And it worked out. I mean, nobody really complained about it.
I think I'd rather have more than less. I mean, I think if we have the two-tier bid system, it still allows us the ability to make that decision, to say, okay, it is whatever it might be, 10% more for local talent. And then I think it does bring in that discussion. I think it's worth knowing what we're paying for.
And on Carl's, just like you're discussing, we used to find that we could get some very good prices from the locals, but also the other flip of that coin is when you start looking at your one-year warranty period, it's a lot easier to get a guy from Bennington to come here than a guy from Manchester, New Hampshire to come and do the repair work. So there's also some benefits to the board as well, not just dollar-wise.
From my experience, warranties really weren't worth a whole lot, ultimately.
Well, honestly, I see the other end of it because a lot of the bidders we deal with on a regular basis. So if they don't self-perform their warranty, guess what? When I put another thing out next year, you're probably not going to be on my list, or if you are, I'm going to recommend to the owner, we had a problem with this guy, so we're going to have to do something different in his contract in the future.
And Vermont has the prompt payment, which gives attorney's fees for people who fail to perform, either on the buyer side or the provider side.
But like Carl's talking about, it would be after the contract was closed out, and we're going back at 6
yeah.
months, and the boiler broke down.
Invariably, somebody has taken a wrench to the boiler, and they say, sorry, the warranty is void because you played with it before we got there.
Yeah.
And also, when we put it out to bid, there'll be partial lien releases at every time there's a requisition. There'll be 10% withholding.
I guess my thought is this, as opposed to two separate bids, because I find that potentially really, as I'm sitting here, I see it as somewhat destructive, actually. If we were to do something like saying that a 5% or some small percent advantage would be given to a prime contractor who is going to use X percent of local talent. That way, you're getting one bid, you're telling him, you choose who you want to choose, but we're going to, if you're not the low bid, but you're within 5% of the low bid, you'll get the contract.
Well, I'm not sure why you use the word destructive, but the federal government can create preferences because it's such a massive institution with such deep pockets that, $75,000, $100,000 doesn't make any difference to them. But if you talk to a Shaftsbury resident about 5%, which in this project is $77,000, and that's almost 2 cents on the tax roll, now it is a big deal because we tend to fight over pennies because it strikes close to home. So I think the benefit of having both is to put the board in a position where it has to justify the expenditure to the public. If we don't do both and just give the bid, have the bid specs give the local preference, then the board takes a hit for not having had the most competitive bid process. And, I would like to support a local preference if it's within the town's means.
But I've also seen, as you have, even on a simple few $1,000 contract, where numbers were relatively substantial, a couple $1,000s, and the board was not comfortable really with going with a low bid, even though it was the low bid, which is the reason why I'm suggesting if we have 2 columns, it might be very, very difficult for us to say, well, let's go with the lowest bid, when we realize that some of the listed subcontractors are neighbors. That's my only point. But for that experience, I would say you're absolutely right, Lon, but I've seen that it's more an emotional thing. So when you get there, that's why I'm saying it could be somewhat destructive. Maybe that's a strong word, but divisive, if you will.
Okay. And the bid I think that you're thinking of is one where we had no policy and we were arguing about a very local preference over somebody from a neighboring town. And at least I think if we start to have the discussion and then build in the specs, any sort of preference, whether it's in there or not, at least we would have made a conscious decision.
Okay.
And thought about it in advance. But the idea tonight is just to put it on the table and then have the board follow up when we're getting our bid strategy together.
Yep.
So, I encourage you to continue the conversation. Okay, it's just about 10
May I
hours.
ask one question
Yep.
real quick?
Yep.
When, from your experience, when you've seen organizations put a preference out there in the bid spec, how have they handled a situation where they've said, if you use 25% local contractors, you know, we may consider your bid if you're high, say 4%, or whatever the case may be. So the bid comes in, they're using 30% local contractors, they're a couple percentage points high, but we say, you know what, they're not that high, they're using all local people, a lot of local people here, it falls within the allowance that we created, we're gonna go with this bidder. Then all of a sudden, when it comes time to hire the contractors, something falls through, and if you're not watching closely, you might not have noticed, but you find out that they didn't use the 25% that you required, they used 15%.
Mm-hmm.
What have you seen as a recourse for that? 'Cause
Never had,
I'm
honestly,
sure-
I haven't had that happen. Well, we've seen, the school board did it, and the hospital used to have a policy of 5% was that threshold where
Yeah.
they could take, you could go upwards of 5% more than the low bid if that contractor was a local purveyor. In our case, we'd have to tweak that because we aren't gonna get the primary will not be a local purveyor. I
So
almost
this,
guarantee it.
that's,
We then have to put in some kind of threshold of, well, to look at this, we want at least 25% or whatever the board feels comfortable with of either local subs or vendors, material suppliers. And then it's up to the general contractor that's responsible to make those numbers work. If somebody backs out, hey, guy, it's your problem, you have now signed a contract that says you're gonna bring us in 25% of local vendors.
oh, and I understand that they're responsible for that. I guess my question is the follow-up, because,
Then he's in violation of his contract, and then if we have to, you go to litigation to say, all right, now you violated the contract, what are you gonna kick back to the town?
No, that,
Yeah.
and I'm with you. I just didn't know if you had seen a good follow-up procedure on that, because from my,
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from,
from my
yeah.
experience dealing in a variety of different organizations, follow-up on these type of agreements tends to be the downfall. And somebody who knows those organizations will kind of roll the dice and say, okay, there's not a recourse here, you know, or whatever the case may be.
Billy,
or they're-
I have seen it. I have not, I've seen where certain subcontractors were named that were going to be on the contract and never showed up.
Oh, yeah.
That's typical.
Yep.
But I've not seen it where someone promises we're gonna have 25% locals and so and so. I've seen where particular types of products were promised. Made in America steel, and Japanese steel showed up on the thing. You have a claim there. You file a claim against them and say, we want money back. That's just as.
And I guess my question, Carl, was if he had seen a procedure for follow-up on that, because I don't see us,
It's a claims procedure in the contract.
Yeah.
It's right in the contract.
if you catch it. And my question is, have you seen a procedure where there's been, you know, that a town or an organization has had in place to catch that? Because I don't think that we're set up that we're,
You have site inspectors that are supposed to be on the site to observe what materials are coming in, who's working, what hours are they working.
so somebody from the
But
town,
You
somebody
need
from
that
the town.
because you don't pay them unless you see that list of who's there, how many hours, and it all works out.
So we have somebody from the town who would be monitoring.
We'd have our
Well-
architect engineer who would be
You
doing
mean
that.
like a clerk of
Even
the
before,
works?
no, it wouldn't be a clerk of the works.
No?
Just to take a step back, and you're getting a little more complicated, because we really wouldn't be caring if he's really there for 10 hours. We'd be looking at percent complete. But as part of the initial contracting phase, before they even put a backhoe on the ground, we'd ask for, we do anyhow, we ask for a list of all the primary subs and all the primary material suppliers. We ask for what's called a schedule of values, which is what's used to bill the project against, which will list dollar figures for the electrical section, the carpentry section, you know, so, and where that's the percent complete we use for the billing process to verify that he's not overbilling us. So we would have a list of those primaries. You know, we're not looking at 95%, we're probably assuming we're looking at someplace in the neighborhood of 25, 40%, or maybe 50%, depending on the board's discretion. So we would have a handle on that up front. It wouldn't be something that's gonna be way at the end of the project, and then everybody says, oh my God, we messed up. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna, say, announce it's time for a break so we can set up for the informational meeting, and then, we'll be back in 10 minutes, about 3 after 7.
Are you gonna continue the? On, Tuesday, March 5th, a week from tomorrow. We divided up the presentation into 2 different parts. I'm gonna talk to you about how we got to the point where we're actually posting the project. And then Jim and Jeff are going to talk about the project itself, and then at the end, I'll talk a little bit about the tax impact. The mailer was pretty extensive. If you have not received a copy of it, we have extra copies up here if anybody wants it. Or
Can you turn number 5, please, a little bit long? On the top. Number 5. Thank you. That's for you.
Oh, thanks. We will, we're gonna run through this, not really quickly, but we wanna, spend as much time tonight answering questions and getting whatever input you have to offer about the proposed project. So, I can't tell you that the planning process started in 2009 because every former select board member I've talked to has told me that they were talking about replacing the town garage for a number of years. So all I can tell you is that our planning process began in about 2009 when we asked for bids for an architectural firm to take a look at Cole Hall and the town garage. And to be honest with you, the focus was really on Cole Hall because we were running out of space. The town clerk was not working in the town office. The choir loft was full of documents and files, and the building was not in great condition. So the focus when we started this whole process was on Cole Hall. Built in 1834, the first Unitarian church in Vermont. Personally, I think it has historic value because of that. When we got the report back from Keefe and Wessner and their engineers, Zaremba Sopko, they told us that there were some problems with the town garage. Structurally, the roof is not sound. It lacks, has only about half of the weight-bearing capacity state standard requires. We had problems that most of the equipment was outside and other issues. So that planning process basically began with us being concerned about these basic issues. The overcrowding, the need for repairs to Cole Hall, the condition of the garage and the lack of space. And we have one other issue, which is the lot behind the garage, just to the north, had been used for many years with the landowner's permission for parking trucks and vehicles, and also for having the town have their sand pile out there. And the land changed hands, and that came to an end. So we were faced with space problems. The key parts of what Keefe and Wessner told us was about was through the engineer's report about the condition of the building. It was built in 1969. I believe it was Art Whitman's father. We discovered the age because Art Whitman's father. Grandfather. Ooh. That's what I heard. Grandfather had written a letter to the engineering firm that eventually provided the building back in 1969. The engineer said the steel skeleton, it's a prefab steel building, the wood framing and concrete floor were in fair condition, and the interior space in poor condition. Keefe and Wessner said the interior condition was consistent with one would expect for this type of operation. The roof itself was substandard. Okay, let's jump to the next one. As I said, we had the problem with most of our trucks, the summer construction equipment, the trailers, all of that sitting outside. In the garage itself, we don't have certain safety equipment. For example, there is not a dedicated area for welding where the welding can be shielded off from the rest of the crew. And we don't have an eye wash facility in the event somebody gets something in their eyes. And the garage itself is not energy efficient. It's an older building that does not meet current energy standards, and the heat is so insufficient that it's difficult during the winter for the crew to work on their maintenance and repairs. Go ahead. You should see the road foreman's office. Concrete block. It's right off of the work bay. Typically, when Ron and I would meet with Margie, it would be Tuesday morning in Margie's office, because Margie had heat, and the road foreman basically was running space heaters to try to keep the office warm. It doesn't have sufficient space for him to be able to stay in there and do the kind of planning, organize bids, and the other work that we expect from the road foreman. The sand storage is outdoors, which you think, oh, that should be fine, except for when the sand gets moisture in it, it basically starts freezing up. You put that into the equipment, the moving parts like the chains and the like, and it causes problems with the sanding equipment on the trucks. The salt shed right now is too small for the amount of salt we use every year. Terry, do you recall off the top of your head, was it 500 tons? 600 tons of salt, and the shed will hold about 60. So we're getting a lot of small loads of salt. And then when we mix it, it's all mixed outdoors and left outdoors in the sand pile. So you get any moisture on that mixed sand and salt, and basically it's dissolving in the moisture, and we're losing the benefit of the salt we just mixed. So the architectural firm basically came up with one conclusion, which was that considering the structural problems, the eyesore dilemma, the lack of space at Cole Hall, and the need to add additional facilities, and the problems we have with parking. If you've ever been to Cole Hall when the trucks are moving in or out, either at the beginning of the day or the end of the day, and then people are coming in to do business, it's quite busy in there. They said the best option would be to demolish the garage and build a new one. We did take a look at some different sites. Go ahead. Oh, let me show you this. This is some of the stuff we have to store. This is the chloride truck. Basically, we took one of our older dump trucks out of service, and the crew added a tank and spraying equipment. So basically, we recycled one of our plow trucks into the chloride truck. I included this picture because this digging equipment has no doors, and it has hydraulic controls on either side that operate the boom. And at this point, since this piece of equipment has no doors, basically, if it snows or rain, it just gets in on the controls of the equipment. On the north side of the garage, we have sort of a shed roof, and these trucks are backed up right up against the back wall. And as you can see, we can't even put these two 1-tons or these two smaller plow trucks completely under cover because the shed's too small for that. The same with the backhoe. The 4 bays of the garage that we do have, that's where the plow trucks are, and that's about as much of the backhoe as we can get covered. And that's what I was trying to show you about the fact that they're in as far as they can go, and then the rest of the space is not usable. This is the salt shed. It's in fairly poor condition. What you're going to see in the next slide, I believe. Up here, there are holes, so it's not really weather tight, so moisture and rain and the like is just can blow in on the salt pile, and that's basically an inefficient, I shouldn't say inefficient, it's a waste when the salt gets wet. This is the sand and salt pile. As you can see, since it sits out there for some time, it gets covered with snow, and that's the moisture problem and the loss of the road salt due to the mixture getting wet. At the transfer station, the road crew stores some equipment. Terry, if I'm right, those go over the top of the dumps, and when you're pouring sand in, they try to break up the sand so it goes through the machine more slowly. And then over here is piping used by the water department. They have a small 1-bay garage that the water department uses to store its other equipment. This is the mower. The only place we have for it right now, given the small size of the Buck Hill lot, is here at the transfer station. So that just sits out all winter until mowing season begins. So this is the Cole Hall property, and we thought about building the new garage facility here, but it's an acre of land, and if you go to the next, you can see that on that acre, Cole Hall and the Veterans Memorial with the trees are right here. This is the existing garage, and there just isn't enough space to build, say, a pole barn to store the rest of our equipment, plus a sand and salt shed for sand and salt. There's no way to configure this lot to be able to provide for what our needs are. So that's when we decided to go ahead and look at the transfer station, which is town land, so we wouldn't have the cost of purchasing land. And I think we should turn the lights off for this. And I'm going to turn it over to Jim and Jeff at this point.
Flip to the next slide, would you? I'm Jim Secor, by the way. You can't probably see me now in the dark. MSK Engineering, used to have another business, McDonald Secor Associates. I sold a few years ago, general contracting. Been a Shaftsbury resident now for probably 20 years. Jeff Goldstone has just come in with us. Our offices are right here in Shaftsbury, of course, right in front of the post office. In this slide, there's the landfill, transfer station. Our proposal is for approximately a 3-acre impacted area, improving the driveway, the new drive coming in, the main building, salt shed, and then pole-type storage building. Can you go back to the next slide, Jeff? More detail, the driveway will be improved so we can get both stacking going into the transfer station and large vehicles coming down into the new town garage site. There'll be a gate access here. That's Joe's water building now, which will be preserved. That's where he stores his truck and some of the more valuable smaller pieces. The other structures will be removed. Driveway will come in. The main facility will be here. That'll be the salt storage facility, storage building here, and then additional storage out in the back. The site will be serviced by on-site septic located in this area, a drilled well over in this area. The site will be all gravel. Exception, we'll have a paved apron right in front of the salt facility. What happens now, though the town isn't legally regulated by the state through the stormwater process, there is a general housekeeping recommendation that this being closed, not what you've got now, we find that you're seeing a lot of off-site contamination because of the sodium from the salt runoff. As a matter of fact, AOT has had problems over the years for contamination of wells located too close to the state highway system. With this will now allow the trucks to be loaded outside. Everything will drain back into the building, so everything will be self-contained into that area, so we won't have any of this off-site contamination concerns. Stormwater-wise, the site will be drained back in this area, so we'll have a small stormwater infiltration basin at this location. The building itself will have a trench drain system with an oil water interceptor located in here, and then that will go out to an in-ground treatment system as well. All the site will be designed in accordance with the latest state and federal requirements for both stormwater and trench drain systems. Now I can't see my notes. What did I miss? Oh, thank you. Like I said, the area of impact is about 3.5 acres. That includes the wellhead protection and septic overlay areas. Again, the site access will be up here to gated area. We'll also be looking at security cameras to monitor the site. Also have an intrusion alarm system and fire alarm system in this building, the concern being that it is out of sight and out of mind somewhat, and we want to make sure we properly protect the assets of the town. If you can flip back to the aerial photograph. Nope, the other way. One nice thing with this site, it is zoned industrial. We're not in the village area like we are now at present. All the surrounding areas are industrial. That's Craig Weaver's piece that he rents from Trevor, and of course Trevor's site here, and of course the transfer station. And you can see here, this is airport and north. We've got a substantial buffering, so the site is going to be screened from any off-site areas for visual protection. You want to flip back to the overall site plan? Sorry about that. So we're looking at the main building right here. It's about 8,700 square feet. That'll house office space, repair garage, as well as storage for the structures. Jeff will get into more detail on the building's design itself. We've got 2,400 square feet for the salt building, plus the pad, and then an additional 4,500 square feet here for a pole barn storage building that'll be secure. Also, this will accommodate storage for the water department's large pipes as well. Whatever they can't store, excuse me, in their existing building, they have the capability now to be able to fit it in this site. Ron, was there anything I missed?
Just talk about, in evaluating the site, we had to take the landfill into consideration in terms of water.
Yeah, right now, the landfill is monitored with a number of wells, both on the northerly end. Then there's also another series of wells on the access road that goes around the dump, and there's another series down here on Airport Road. Right now, the only well that's having any concerns, and that's limited, is the old well that used to service, I believe it was a trailer that was there. We have another well located down in here that has had a recent hit, but it's minor. All the other wells meet the potable water standards for the state of Vermont. So we don't feel our new well is going to be located over here, as far away from that well as we possibly can get, and it's up gradient from that well. So we feel we aren't going to have any problems as far as getting water to the site. The site's all gravel, which makes it easy for the septic as well as for the stormwater infiltration area. And we're looking at a cut site overall, which the town's crew is going to be doing some of that work to keep the overall cost of the construction down to a minimum. And we're looking at hopefully we'll be able to even mine some of the gravel that's there for future projects around the township.
This has been perked and passed?
Yes, we are, as a matter of fact, we already have the state permit for the well as well as for the septic. Yes.
Where's the road that now goes up to the upper part of it?
Right. There's the entrance to the transfer station, there's the transfer building, then that other access road that comes around this way. Is that the one you're talking about? Yep, yep. So we're down over the bank from that. Just that, you might be able to see it better there. There's that access road I think you were talking about, and that comes up this way. Yep, and we're veering off and coming down here. There's a plateau that was mined, apparently was mined a number of years ago for the gravel, so it's already partially leveled and partially cleared.
It seems to me that a quicker access to Airport Road.
There's a severe grade difference right here. We did look at that. We also, oops, can you flip back? Oh, can you
see the grade there.
No, you can't. Why don't you flip back? We also did look at possibly looking at trying to get an easement across Trevor's land where Craig's piece is, but there's a small river that comes down this way, and it's severe down. It's straight down. Yeah, it's probably over 25% slope. Yeah, we're right to the edge of where the grade breaks on this drawing right here where we got the parking lot. So,
And that potentially would have added a culvert expense if we had to cross a stream. And those are difficult to predict, but we thought that potentially $100,000 we could avoid by coming in the existing entrance.
and we'll be upgrading this access with better drainage, plus bring it into compliance with Agency of Transportation standards for commercial and industrial lots. Right now, that access road is probably 50% undersized for what it really should be for that kind of use. It does. Any other site questions? Yeah.
Is there ever a concern that you need to pay to the entrance that goes over here for?
Right here, we hadn't, and I guess that's something that could be looked at down the road. It is stable now. One good thing, the guys that need to maintain it are gonna be right there. And it's dirt going into it. Normally, we'd get more concerned about it if it's a paved going into gravel or heavy use. Yeah? Push buttons, are you gonna be okay?
So we can talk about the three buildings. We've touched on all three of them already. And of course, these are very schematic design plans at the moment for the three buildings, and I'm sorry that they're difficult to read with this projector, but let me take you through them. This is the main garage building, and as Jim said, it's 8,720 square feet as currently designed, and it is made up of 3 garage spaces, this being the main garage, which is 4 bays. I'm going to be going through some specifics because I'm sure those questions will come up. I'll answer the questions in advance, but I apologize for some of the numbers I'll throw out. That we'll have a 16-foot ceiling height in there. The bay depth is 49 feet, which gives us enough depth so that in the winter when the trucks are occupying the garage bays here, there'll still be some room behind them to do small equipment repairs, the summer equipment that needs to be repaired in the winter, in the off hours, lawnmowers, etc. We also have a smaller garage with 3 bays. Those bays are 36 feet deep and they have an 18-foot ceiling height in there. And finally, there's this bay. Now that's a very long, deep bay that's accessed from this direction, and that is a repair bay. It's designed to be large enough for to service the largest vehicle in the fleet, which is the excavator with its boom extended, and it will be equipped with a lift to take large and heavy equipment off of trucks or engines out of trucks, etc. It also would be an area that welding could occur separated from the 2 garages and the people in those garages. This small wing here is the office wing, and in that is the office, the main office there for the highway foreman. There's a common room here which would have a small kitchen area, but would also be a place large enough for the staff to have training sessions as well as meetings. And there are lockers within that space. Then there's a bathroom and a small office for the water department superintendent. That room, just for scale, is a little over 300 square feet. Above this area here, we are proposing to put a mezzanine for storage, take some of the load out of the storage at hall, such as voting machines when they're not in use, and some of the dead storage that doesn't have to get accessed very often. And then this 1 square here, there's a mechanical room for the building. Jim mentioned that we have to meet certain building standards. Included in those are the energy standards, which are new to they've been upgraded. There are new energy standards in the state, and this building is proposed to meet them. The construction would be 2x8 stud construction. We're not proposing to do this as a steel building for a number of reasons, which if anyone's interested, we can discuss after if you have questions. It's 2x8 steel stud, or 2x8 wood stud with a dense packed cellulose insulation, a wood truss roof over the top of that, and we're proposing to put I can show you an elevation. We're proposing to put the clapboard siding on the exterior, so this would be the main elevation with the garage bays, the small office bay here, and the side where the office is. We're proposing a large overhang over the garage doors to protect the garage doors immediately outside the garage doors from snow and rain. Jim mentioned that within the garage, I'm afraid it's a little hard to see, at least from my angle, there are 2 long strip drains in the floor that will have oil and debris separation built into it per state requirements. We're also proposing to heat the building using a radiant slab heat, which is a very efficient way of heating a high space like this, so that the people who are working on the trucks, etc., down close to the slab can get the heat directly off the slab without heating all the air above. We are proposing to have that zoned in 4 different areas so that if there's a desire to keep any of them cooler in the winter era, the winter months, of course, it can be done. Ventilation is a concern. We have requirements for ventilation by the energy code that just is good fresh air for the occupants of the building. But in addition to that, in a building such as this, in the winter months when we have the snow caked on the bottom of the truck, comes in, falls on the ground, and you have high moisture content, we are proposing to do a heat recovery ventilation system as well as a major ventilation system for those high humidity areas or high humidity times.
There's a sort of a funny story, isn't there, Jim, about the town that built the garage without the ventilation system?
Well, it wasn't a town. It was a contractor up on Stratton. They built a beautiful, tight building, closed self-foamed it. They put their trucks in there and melted it. And they called us up afterwards because we got a permit for the siting. Lo and behold, they had water running down the inside of the building and rusting out the interior liner panels because the humidity level was so high. They just could not control it. They ended up doing exactly what we're proposing now, a high ventilation, humidity controlled ventilation system to get that moisture out. So it is a definite issue, especially in this type of use for snowplow trucks, both private and commercial.
I was thinking sort of the fog effect of the.
Oh, you got in there and it got hot, and yeah, you could build up your own environmental standards inside one of these buildings if you don't properly ventilate. Might be good for work if you're not for truck.
So I want to go to the site plan to talk about the other two buildings, and very briefly, the construction of the salt and sand shed as well as the storage shed. The salt and sand shed is going to have high concrete walls. You can see that it's set back into the hillside here, so those will be retaining walls, 10 feet high, and that allows both mixing and storage of the sand and salt against those walls, and they're called push walls in there, so you can actually lift against those walls. We intend to clad the exterior of this building with metal panels, which is a less expensive alternative than the fiber cement siding we plan on the main building. And that would be above the concrete walls, and of course that's an open front on that. That would have a 25-foot clear height to the underside of the trusses and an asphalt shingle roof. The storage shed, which has also been referred to here as a pole barn, is an open air structure. It will have sliding doors on the front so it can be locked. It is approximately 4,000 square feet with an open air storage area in the back, protected but open storage area in the back of another 500 square feet. And then also behind that building will be the fueling area, which is the current fuel air system that they have now will be moved up there. Also metal panels on the exterior, and it's a wood pole barn. So that pretty much summarizes the construction of the three buildings. Yes?
I got three questions, and I'll get to your salt and sand storage buildings first. Have you considered a coverall type structure on top of your concrete house? Similar to what, say, New York's using, or a lot of towns are using?
We considered it briefly, and I can ask Jim to respond to the cost issues. We were led to believe, and this is perhaps not complete research yet, that the choice of that is of short term, of course, is less expensive. In the long term, you end up replacing them more often.
10 years or something?
Yeah, 10 or fewer years.
Yeah.
Whereas this could potentially last 30, 40, 50 years if it's well maintained. So that was why we were straight away.
I just wanted to consider.
Right, and they're not inexpensive. They look
I
very
realize
expensive.
that, I
They're
realize
not,
that,
yes.
but you can go either way,
Yes.
having the walls you've got, and I just wondered why, and I use the state of New York as an example, because they've directed quite a few of their own in that manner. They've also affected a very much involved. I like the idea from, they are very wind resistant, and they shed snow, and you don't have to worry about that, but yeah, sooner or later you do that.
Right, and the other thing is one of the reasons, and maybe it anticipates a question someone else might ask, one of the reasons for the wood, and only one of them, but one of the reasons for going with a wood structure on the main building was that the repairs to that building could be done by the staff, by the employees. And likewise with the salt and sand building, one of the problems is if a sand delivery, the truck, for instance, moves while it's dumping and tears or damages that structure is shot, or it's very difficult to repair. Whereas if the same thing were to happen with the wood structure, it's easily repaired. So it's one of the other considerations.
The other two questions have to deal with the main shop building. Do you propose extending the walls, knee wall, having like a
Yes.
4-foot knee wall?
Thank you for asking. No, not 4 feet. We looked at various heights. One of the challenges with a high concrete wall is the energy code issues related to that, because we can't just have a concrete wall that's uninsulated.
Oh.
The code won't allow us. But we are going to bring that up 12 inches out of grade.
I think you should go more from fire retardant and fire safety standard, because sooner or later, somebody's gonna be using torch in any part of those three sections. And it's maintenance free, and it automatically puts all your electrical more than 4 feet off the floor, where it's gotta be up 18 inches or more from a plan building. So now you've got everything up, well out of water splash. away from any hazards near the floor, so all your electrical stuff is at least 4 feet off the floor.
It's also, they got a
Looking
liner.
at 2 buildings we had at Daly's, back in 30 years, and I watched them build one in 1970 and one in 1990. They had a 4-foot knee wall around there, and everything seemed to work well, and you couldn't set the building on fire from grinding or cutting or something like that.
We actually, and it's not going to address all of your issues, but we are proposing to do a plywood liner on the inside.
I would suggest fire coat sheetrock then.
And we could actually go with
Well,
a
it
fire
is, it's
retardant.
gonna be plywood, it's gonna be fire coat sheetrock, and then a face of plywood that can be epoxy painted.
I'll go the other way around, just again, get.
Well, they might go-
Well, we don't want the sheetrock to be the outer one, only because if it is, it's going to be damaged so quickly.
Well, there's all kinds of milk house liners and stuff like that that you put there that are less flammable than wood. The second question I have concerning these buildings is your drainage in the building. I realize you're gonna have oil and water separators. We ran into problems down here, and we wound up, because we didn't have oil and water separators, we had to discontinue the use of those drains. They became just a stagnant drain that you had to dig out and deal with. But they built the first one with the floor drain right down the middle of the floor. You got an 80 by 108 building, and floor drain right in the middle. And anything you wanted to move across the middle of the shop, you had to cross that drain. And when they went to build the second building, I fought long and hard and lost the argument. But I said, let's put perimeter drains out by the doors and pitch your floor both ways. Have a drain by the back wall, have a drain by the doors. Catch any rainwater blowing in or catch any water at the edge, but your whole middle part of your shop is free. And again, sooner or later, somebody's gonna be greasing the truck or doing something else on the creeper and wanna cross the middle of the shop, and that will become a barrier. It's just something to think about. You can still tee them together for your water.
Yeah, get your layer thing. One thing we did do on this one is we pushed that trench drain up higher, so just for that case, that this is where we felt there gonna be no work. There is no drain system in the maintenance bay, just because we're concerned that, heaven forbid, this is not designed for heavy-duty truck maintenance. And we didn't wanna have an issue where somebody's in there working and all of a sudden they ruptured the oil pan and we just dumped, how many gallons of hydraulic fluid onto the floor.
Do you propose to pitch the floor to the door then?
Not in here, we want to keep this, so if we do have a spill, it's going to be self-contained and then serviced on-site by staff.
Okay,
Or whatever they need to.
I'm thinking of snow melt.
In here, they shouldn't be bringing the vehicles in for snow melt. This is where they're going to be washing them off, the big trucks.
Okay.
And then this is only for service of something that's been cleaned up. The oil water interceptor system, there's 2 trash racks in this, and then we're looking at a Zern separator. It's self-contained, the oil tank itself, like the old style, we used to have to pipe them outside, and then we're getting underground storage tank issues, we don't want to deal with it. This one is self-contained with a secondary holding tank for the oil, and it fails safe. Basically, if somebody's not maintaining it, which we will have a photo line in here, so we can give them fair warning. If they don't maintain it and it gets up too high, it will self-fail, it's gonna back up into the trenches and will not exit the building.
Okay, but the water from washing trucks gets separated to it?
Right, it comes out, it'll go out here to an infiltration basin out here that we've gotta get a permit for. The bulk of the truck washing is gonna be exterior to the building to meet state code requirements. The main thing for that trench drain is snow melt, and then as the vehicles come in the wintertime, they wanna, wash them off to get that excess salt off, as well as the ice and other debris as well that comes in.
What do you propose to pitch on the floor?
This one, this trench drain self-pitches. They come pre-manufactured and 1/8 of an inch per foot. I think we were figuring probably about an 8 going into them and a flat section back in here. We haven't finalized that full design.
What we did down here, and it was too much pitch for 4 inches.
Yeah.
And it was 1 inch and 10 feet.
Yeah, and the
4
other-
inches, I can tell you that will roll a truck.
Oh, yeah, and the other problem,
And I know a couple guys got their toolbox in there.
and the other problem you got is when you're down on this end, when you're starting to get to that closed wall, you get, you need more. That's why I like those self-pitching drain systems. Yeah.
But not too much.
Yeah, 1/8 of an inch per foot, yeah, that'll move the solids, and then that'll go to a trash rack on both sides. There'll be 2 separate trash racks before you even enter the oil separator, and that's still got a 3rd trash rack in here as well. Yep.
Jim, you're proposing a stick-built building.
Yeah.
How are you gonna protect the bay entrances?
Bollards.
It just
Oh, okay,
seems-
I'm sorry, I interrupted.
Again, a 4-foot wall.
Well, actually, there will be bollards on the outside, so that, obviously, that would protect the building from a truck that was, going to miss the door completely. And then the jam itself would be lined with steel angles high enough to protect the jam on both sides.
I see these around alleys that have these full concrete buildings. You said something
The
about
precast?
The precast buildings.
We did look at that option a lot. We also looked at the steel building option, and we looked at the pre-manufactured steel building option. And based on cost and utility, we found that this was the best alternative. We don't have full costings in all of those, but that precast option was,
Oh, it's going to be higher.
yeah, a lot higher.
Well, we can get into the cost when we get to the next slide, if you don't mind waiting just a few minutes on dollars. I've got another presentation just a little bit more on
And
this.
just, we also intend to open up the bidding
Right.
to any contractor that proposes to build this building to meet all of our requirements in another system. They can propose that as part of the bidding. So if in fact somebody could come along and do a precast building that meets the energy requirements, you know, gives us the aesthetic that we're going to propose to you as well as to the permits, and do so at a similar cost, we would obviously entertain that option.
It just seems the concrete would have a longer life.
Yeah.
Without question, but the cost difference is dramatic.
Well, I'm not jump ahead. I did an analysis when I ran the cost numbers, and I used the salt shed for an example. It was almost a factor of 2 to go to the precast. Granted, we're probably looking at a 30 to 40-year life expectancy on that building. But it kind of blew the budget. Well, that's why we do want to put in there, it's like, God knows, I know somebody around here that does these precast buildings. And we'd love to give them the opportunity to come in and say, we want to make that a showcase, and we want to be able to put our building up, point to it, and say, that's ours. So we're going to put in, our proposal is the base building will be the wood-type structure, a bid alternate to go to pre-engineered steel, and a second alternate if people want to exercise it to go to the precast. Yeah, just so everybody gets a good shot at it. Yeah. Because they built a ton of these buildings over about a year ago. You see them up at Stratton. I think Wilmington did one. We came in a year too late. We got a brand new building code, and we got a brand new energy code. And every one of those buildings that were built a year ago do not meet those standards for the most part. So that increased our costs. But it's also going to, overall, it's going to help to save money for the town based on what we're not going to have to use for each building. Yeah.
Chip,
Yeah.
Kenny?
you got an 8-bay building here. You don't have, excuse me, you don't have 8 trucks in the wintertime that you're working on, that's working for the town. Also, like your, all right, we'll say the excavator out the door, or the tractor that does the mowing, or any of that. That stuff doesn't need to be stored in this building. It's a heated building. You could double the size or triple the size of your pole barn, cut this building down to maybe 6 days or less, and save a lot of money. That building's gotta be, what, 10, 20 times per square foot, dollar-wise to the pole barn?
Kenny, this building's only gonna have the 4 large plow trucks, plus the 2 smaller plow trucks and the water department truck, and leave the, repair bay open for repairs, and they do work on the graders and other equipment during the winter months. All of the summer construction equipment you just described would go into the pole barn, that you said is a good winter storage
It would be.
facility.
I mean, all of my equipment, as long as I've been in business, has never been in a garage of any kind for heated storage.
Right, but the equipment that you're saying shouldn't be in the heated storage will not be in heated storage. It's gonna be in the pole barn, which is
Well, I
unheated
still don't
space.
follow why you need the 8 bays though.
Because we
I
have
understand the one repair bay.
4 bays are for our current 4 plow trucks.
Right.
We have 2 smaller trucks that we use to plow in the village.
You're plowing with 6 trucks?
Yes.
Yes,
4 on dirt, 2 on asphalt.
Wow. You
And
don't
then
need
we
that
have-
many- You don't need that many trucks.
historically, it takes the 6 crew members 8 hours to do 1 pass of plowing and 1 pass of sanding and salting. So,
How did I ever manage with 3?
I don't know, Kenny.
I think it's too much money.
Okay. So do you want to go to the next part? Because we're going to have more time for questions.
Oh, thanks. This is the cost breakdown that we came up with. This is primary for the main building, the site work, and the salt shed. I did this, basically I put my old hat on and said, all right, I'm a general contractor, I'm gonna bid this. We went out and physically got bids on the building itself for the overhead doors, wood framing, concrete, so we could get a pretty accurate number on this. Of course, I can kind of go through it. I mean, general conditions is your insurances, your bond costs, et cetera. The site work is based on the town self-performing the clearing, putting the access drive in, and bringing the site to within 12 inches plus or minus for a level site for the site contractor or the general contractor to come in. So the site work is probably about $40,000 less based on the town being able to self-perform those services to keep the cost down. Concrete block work, we're looking at, of course, your foundation system. We've got any interior walls, we're looking at doing that with a block stem wall, again, so we can keep everything up at least 12 inches. Miscellaneous metals, just bollards, minor stuff. The wood, that's basically your wood construction for the building itself, your trusses, doors and windows. The overhead doors is the biggest price in the air. There's some minor windows and stuff in the office space. Finishes, your painting, sheetrock work. There's an electrical price for new service coming on the property. We're looking at bringing in the service off of North Road, utilizing the existing poles that are servicing the water building. That's got to be increased. We're looking at dropping 2 new poles and then going underground into the new building. Plumbing costs, which is also your heating. Ventilation, well, it's because there's heating in both of those, I should say, because the inflow radiant is all done by the plumber. Then your boiler and ventilation for the air exchange system for the building. Thermal and moisture is your insulation, your shingles. Miscellaneous specialties. Oh, trench drain system, that's the bulk of that cost right there, in the oil water interceptor. Then our price estimate for the salt shed and the apron at the salt shed. We normally will carry, and it's industry standard, we carry a 10% contingency for any changes during construction, anything that gets picked up that gets changed during the final design. Overhead and profit, 15% for a total estimated cost of just a little over $1.5 million. We're still seeing good bidding out there, thank God. We're not seeing decrease in material costs, though our pricing has been coming in very aggressively in the last few years for the project we have been bidding out. But that's coming off the guys' labor costs and honestly the site guys' costs. And the material costs, we're seeing anywhere from a 5 to 7% increase every year. We do not have the pole barn structure in that estimate. But we're hoping is that number right there will pick up that shortfall, and we're looking at a good bidding environment to be able to bring that in. Anything else?
No.
Want to add in the numbers?
Yeah, we can go to the next impact.
Oh, yep.
Okay, so we've talked with the Vermont Bond Bank and gotten estimates as to what it's going to cost. And we wanted to show the property owners how it could affect their primary residence. The first year, the bond payment is interest only. So that's why it's so low, and it's less than 1 cent on the tax rate. So if your home was $100,000, that first year you'd pay $8.07 in addition to what the property tax is going to be. For 2014, the Select Board's proposing a budget where there'll be no increase in taxes. For a $200,000 home, the bond would cost you $16.13. And on a $300,000 home, it's $24.20. We start paying off the bonds in 2015, and that's why there's a larger payment that comes due. So it's almost, not quite 3 cents on the tax rate to get that $115,000. So for people with $100,000 homes, it's $27.59. $200,000 homes, it's $55.18, and if you have a $300,000 home, you'd pay $82.77. Over the next 18 years, as the bonds are paid off, then the amount that you pay starts to decrease. Because again, each year we're paying the interest that's accrued, and $75,000, I believe it is, or $95,000, approximately that, to pay off the bond. To give you an idea of what the decrease is like, I just showed what the last payment is going to be. So at the high point in 2015, the $100,000 homeowner is paying $27. In the last year, it's $18.18. And you can see it drops about $19 over the 20 years for the person who owns a $200,000 house, and $28 for a person who owns a $300,000 home. Yes.
What's the interest rate on the bond?
Well, that's okay. I'll give you the complicated answer. They do not sell one bond. They sell 20 bonds, and each bond has a different length of longevity. So the first bond is, this bond is 1 year. That's a 1-year bond. And the next year we pay a bond that has a term of 2 years. And the next year we pay the bond that has a term of 3 years. So we're paying off separate bonds, each a year longer than the next. If you took the weighted average of all 20 bonds, it's 3%. Okay? 3.07% to be more precise. So that's roughly what we're going to pay over the 20 years, 3% interest. But if you look at the 1-year bond, it's more like 1.5% for the first year. And it slowly creeps up as you're paying off the bonds that are longer in length. At year 10, the bond bank often will recast the second 10 bonds. And what happens then is, because now they're short-term bonds as opposed to long-term bonds, they can cram the interest rate down. And that means that in year 2024, these payments might be a lot less if the bond bank goes ahead and recasts all of those 10 bonds into short-term bonds. Because short-term bonds pay lower interest rates than long-term bonds. So our best projection, if nothing changes, it's 3%. It can be under 3% if they recast the bonds in year 10. Yeah?
Is that based on current interest rates, 1 year at a time, and then it's it balloons and changes? Or is that throughout the 20 years of the bond?
Each of the 20 bonds has a different interest rate. And so it starts at about 1.5% and creeps up till you get to about 2.75% or 3%.
Creep up more, or is this set, response all set?
It's fixed, Juan.
It's, the rate for each bond is fixed.
For the whole 20 years?
For the whole 20 years. But they can recast 10 years of bonds once you're 10 years out, so that they can charge a lower interest rate for the second 10-year period.
But they can't charge more.
They can't charge more. And if it turns out that it doesn't make sense to recast, they won't. They only do it if it's to the advantage of the borrower, and that's all the municipalities using the bond bank. Okay, so these, once the bonds go out for sale in July, they're fixed. And the bond bank's best estimate is they expect that over the life of the 20 years, it'll be about 3.07% fixed.
What is the expected life of this structure?
Jim?
One reason we went to the wood frame construction, both was cost. Also, honestly, it was to be able to hopefully entice more local labor. You go to a pre-engineered metal building, you're buying it out of a box, and somebody's gonna come out of Maine who's gonna put it up. This building, it'll be able to be maintained properly by the town. So we're looking that the building itself should last as long as they're gonna maintain it properly. One good thing with the wood, it's not a specialty contractor that's gotta do it. If something gets damaged, it can be fixed by in-house or local talent. So,
Why do we have leaky, if we're gonna maintain these buildings, why do we have leaky roofs and all that stuff happening right now? Why aren't we maintaining what we have existing?
I'll pass on that, I'm not in charge of maintenance, but, but, I mean, that was a pre-engineered metal building. Back when those were built, metal build, I used to sell them. Metal buildings are built right to the cusp, right to the edge. When you say you want a 40-pound snow load, you got a 40-pound snow load. And they're not easy to make. You know, a shingle roof, you strip the shingles off, you fix it. You get a metal roof that rots, well, now you gotta rip the whole roof off and fix it, and now you're into the insulation. And it's an easy thing that, it's expensive to do that, and it's not somebody that's gonna be Joe Schmo that's gonna be doing it. It's gonna have to come from a specialty contractor to come in and fix it properly. And as far as preventive maintenance, I don't know.
Are you guys gonna have time to do it?
Well, what we've been doing more recently is we've been hiring some contractors, but since Terry's been the road foreman, Terry, you can address that.
I just want to know on the building we have now, when I took it over, had some pine needles, whatever on top of it. I got up there and I swept it off. There were several leaks in it. And I took a wire brush to clean out the tar and the pitch of it. The aluminum is so thin on that roof, I went through the aluminum with the wire brush. I had to use a small bristle broom. And then all I had to use was a rubber undercoating to spray stuff to patch the holes. Right now we have no leaks, but the aluminum roof is extremely thin.
Oh, that brings me another question.
No.
If you guys wanna have these guys help with the site plan, now, to dig out the gravel and stuff, now they're gonna have time to do that.
Terry, do you want to tell them what your plan is for a...
My plan is just to use 3 guys out of the 6 road crew guys we have. And if the bond does pass, we're hoping to get in there basically before the summer road maintenance really gets thriving, except for the repairs of the mud holes, which we can do with the graders. We only have 2 graders anyway. Basically, on the basic days of digging the stumps out and whatnot, we have the older Army truck that we purchased with 1 excavator operator loading the stumps in the truck, so that'd only be 2 out of the 6 guys working on the site at that time.
Now, this is the rough site work, and the finished work is, for the crew, is on the road, leading from North Road down to the site. But I forget the specification, Jim, but basically they're gonna have the site within a certain specification in terms of levelness.
Right.
And then the contractor takes over the site and our crew is done.
Yep, and as soon as you get plus or minus 12 inches and you've got the rough grading done, the general contractor will take over and he'll complete the entire project.
So we're not doing all of the site work, we're doing the rough site work and the roadway finished to spec. Okay, the next one,
Yeah.
then I'd like to just,
Yeah.
Oh, sir.
Have you done any digging around or any excavation or?
We did test bits up there for the septic, and it was all gravel. We didn't hit any dead sand, I know.
Yeah, well, no, I'm thinking of a guy that called me tonight that used to work at the landfill before it was closed. Said that there's underground drains in there that's gonna go right down into where that building's proposed.
We didn't hit any, we dug down in a couple different locations on that flat plateau,
I
and
mean,
all
he
we did was
didn't,
good gravel.
you know, he couldn't explain it to me, so I
Yeah.
could get it to, but he had exactly where they were.
Boy.
But they're in the area of where that garage is proposed, because I got a print because I'm a adjoining landowner.
Yep.
And the way I understood him, that they've got underground drains that drain that from up on the hill, right down through there.
well, Karen, you were here when they were capping the landfill. Wasn't the landfill supposed to be totally self-contained?
Yeah.
And it's not, the landfill is not draining through the soil. There weren't drains built into the,
Yeah, I don't know, Ron, all I know is what the man told me. He worked there for a lot of years.
yeah, but when it was capped, the idea was the cap was supposed to be impermeable. Nothing could get through the cap, all the way down under the soil. And that's why they have the monitoring wells, to see if anything is leaching out of there. Because that would be a problem.
Aren't they the same wells that were there 20 years ago?
No, these are monitoring wells. There are about a dozen of them that were built, I believe, when the were installed when the landfill was built. That's my understanding,
That's
Karen.
right, it's a whole system of monitoring those.
And then there's,
They were all new from the county.
Because I know there was some,
There
back
wa-
when I worked for the town, there was some up there.
there was a well that was servicing a mobile home that's been just, raised to the ground. But that well is not used for anything. So there was a well up there. You just hit the next one. Just want to tell people, I do want to have more conversation, but I'd like to do it with the lights on. So I'm just going to go to this next two. So you can see what the town garage is like. We're going to have 2 open houses, one Friday, March 1st from 4 to 6, and then Saturday morning, 8 to 11. Terry has kindly offered to be there so you can talk to him about how the highway department operates and all that. And members of the select board will be there too, so you can ask us questions about what the plan is and give us your comments and suggestions and criticisms. We welcome them all. And then the vote, if we go to the next, is going to be Tuesday, March 5th. So are there any other questions for anybody who's Tyler?
Yeah, what happens if the bond issue fails? What's all that?
Well, if it fails, then, what we have to decide to do is, if we're going to do an informal poll, exit poll, to find out why it went down. They did that when North Bennington was considering its first bond proposal. It was helpful because the Prudential Committee was able to identify what was the largest concern, and that bond, I think it was price. And they went from $1.5 million to $1 million, and the next bond passed. But the select board hasn't decided whether it's going to poll people or not, but we may do that.
And then what happens to the old garage?
Well, for now, we have to have a place for the sidewalk machine, because we have to plow the sidewalks and also spread sand throughout the village. And so until we get some substitute storage facility for that, a small shed or whatever, we keep the garage up long enough for that transition.
I have 2 questions. Is there any way to project, or get an idea of the cost of utilities for this complex compared to, for example, existing? That's one question. And second question, what I think somebody was looking at the 30 to 40 year monthly.
Jim, do you want to address
The life expectancy, again, this building should last as long as the town maintains it properly. That's the way we wanted it designed. So, yeah, it should last that long. Yes. Well, it could be longer. I mean, we've got wood frame houses in town and they're over 100 years old. And then one reason we went to the siding materials and that, instead of going to all metal, for example, one was aesthetics, the other one, if somebody does it, you can replace the concrete plaster. I mean, it's designed so it can be maintained and maintained by something that's not I shouldn't say high skill level, because it's carpentry, a standard skill level.
When we,
What about utilities?
we haven't completely analyzed those. It will probably cost more because it's 8,700 square feet as compared to 2,800. Well, the radiant chlorine should be more efficient. And if we go to propane as opposed to oil,
It's not more efficient than not heating.
well, the crew has to be in there to work on the equipment.
I'm not saying that, but you said currently it's not heated.
It's not well heated, the current garage.
So it's gonna be cheaper to heat it than it is,
No, it's gonna be more efficient, we're gonna get more bang for our buck.
but it's still gonna cost more.
The utilities probably are gonna be higher, that's right.
And not just heat, electricity.
Electricity, I'm not sure if that's gonna be substantially different. I mean, we're gonna have some more things like the surveillance cameras and the like, but
Yeah,
I'm not
that'll-
sure it's gonna be very significant.
The lighting system, we're looking at high efficiency, T5 fluorescence, more than what the efficiency code requires. Exterior lighting for the LED lighting, the camera system is minor amplitude.
Ventilation system, if you're going all the time.
Not not with the control system we're proposing. It's occupancy sensors, it's also controlled by carbon monoxide detection. And then the bigger ventilation system will be based on humidity control. And that will be a heat recovery ventilator. So basically, we'll recapture the waste heat up to 85+%. So we're just not gonna dump air outside the building. We're gonna temper, that waste air that's going out is gonna temper the incoming air that's coming in. So we don't have to heat it up to 100%. One good thing with the radiant floor system, for example, garages are great. You open that overhead door up, put them trucks in, and all of a sudden your air is coming in and out. At least with the radiant, you're not heating the air, you're heating the object. That mass of concrete now becomes the radiation point. So when you open those doors, you don't waste all that heat. It keeps radiating itself. And that's why they don't recover quite as fast, but they are one of the most efficient ways to heat a garage. You're looking at, an R40 roof system. You've probably got an R10 if you're lucky over there. The sidewall insulations are off the top of your head, Jim?
Yeah, no, but I do know it's here, R23.
R23. And this is an air sealed building. So really, those R values are real R values. For an the way we used to build buildings 5 years ago, we used to call them an R19 sidewall with an R38 roof. But the way we built them, you probably really got equivalency like an R7 to an R10 or 20. Because we're now sealing things up better to keep that hot air in there.
What's the R rating on the garage doors?
The high, they're R15 or 18. Yeah, it's 2 inches of rigid insulation. They're heavy duty commercial buildings. We use them like NSK, those are the standard doors we would use at NSK and those kind of buildings. Yeah. You can't get much better insulation quality on a standard commercial door. Yeah.
What's the guarantee that when we get this halfway done, the taxpayers okay this garage and it's $1.5 million, that we're halfway done and they go, and we need another $1 million?
Well, they're gonna be under contract for a fixed price. We're not gonna do a time and material type of arrangement. When they get the contract, they have to post a bond for performance.
Performance and payment. So if they can't perform and they come back and say, oh man, I messed my bid up, I'm gone. Well, guess what? We've got a bond for 100% of that bid. The bond company comes in and completes that project. Heaven forbid you get a contractor and he's paying the last job with the money he got from this job. That bond also pays all the subcontractors and material suppliers. So the town is totally off the hook and you still get the project.
And one of the things we talked about tonight was, and the board has a lot more discussion to do about how to do it, but we're talking about some way to provide a preference for local contractors. So while they may not be able to bond a project, there are some mechanisms that Jim has informed the board about where you can ask a larger contractor to bid the project using local subs, electricians, plumbers, carpenters, and what their lowest bid is. The board hasn't settled on the bid strategy yet, but we are considering some way of keeping that money in the community. Kenny?
I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, Powell got stuck by the federal government saying, you guys gotta have a city sewer. If we get anything, any indication that Shaftsbury might get hit with something like that?
For the city sewer? No.
because that would be multi-millions of dollars.
Yeah, I think one of the problems the town had was that they only had a private water company, and they were frequently on boil water numbers. And so their problems were bigger than just their septic systems. I mean, the whole water supply system was in crisis. Yeah.
Emergency power.
Yeah, we're gonna have capabilities for plugging in generators at the town already.
Terry?
I'd just like to say that everyone is weighing the odds on this building. I'd like also to remember that in the 4 big trucks that are in that garage, there's about $600,000 that the town has already spent or is spending on the vehicles that are in there. There's a loader in there now also. We've got that wedged in there barely, making it into a loader that we got provided by the military. But if you want to add the value, add up to $700,000 without all the smaller tools in this garage right now that would sort of offset the $1 million cost for that building, I would think, that we've only got, or we got inside this garage. If it ever did come down, you're not replacing these in a day. You got insurance, but you're not getting another truck in a day or two. It would take 6 months to get new trucks. We could probably scrounge and hire subcontractors to do our job for us, but you're not gonna replace $1 million worth of equipment overnight.
And the new grader was what, $360,000?
Yeah.
And the town, how long did you set aside money every year? $10,000, $15,000 a year to get a new grader? I mean, the idea is to keep these things in service 20 and 30 years. I think we've got to.
How often are we, how long is the town at this point keeping a grader? How old is the oldest grader we have?
The oldest one we got is these, it's an 86.
An 86. And what's the newest one?
2010.
2010, so you're trying to get, what, 15?
Oh, at least,
years out of us.
Oh, anyway.
at least 20.
Our excavator is an 88.
88.
We're trying to do at least a 10-year cycle on our dump trucks. Most towns are down to 7.
I think, it's fair to say, too, that the board has been looking at interest rates and understanding that this is a project that we've really, as Lon said, been thinking about and talking about and planning for a lot of years. And I think we've tried to be really mindful of the economy. I mean, we're all faced with it.
No,
And
like, I'm not saying that I'm opposed to the whole thing. I understand
Right.
the importance of having a good, solid building. What I'm just saying from my heart is that over the next 20 years, I don't see my wages going up. I'm coming to the end of my work cycle here. And I would just like the project to be just kept as frugal as possible for what your needs are for the town. I can't see strapping everything that we need to do, onto the backs of the property owners in the town.
And I think we agree. It's one of the reasons, frankly, that the board chose not to look at a coal haul project, in spite of the needs of that facility. The feeling after all of the planning studies and the facilities committee that has done a lot of work on this, really determined that the greatest need was in the garage, and the interest rates are at a historic low at this point. That garage isn't going to get any better, we all know that. And it's, we've tried, I think, certainly as a board, to be mindful and try to contain any tax implications from our own town budget over the last several years. The school is a separate issue, but we try to, we're mindful of that. We know that, your primary taxes are going to the school. And so we have really tried hard to keep the municipal tax rate stable. But we're coming to you now saying, you know, we really feel that this is a need. We don't see frills in this project. I think as a board, we've been, you know, we've looked at this very carefully. You know, there aren't, you know, we don't have air conditioning systems in there and, you know, fancy stuff, other than ventilation systems that are needed to basically protect the fleet that we have. You know, when we talk about longevity of a building, I mean, we've got one out there that, I forget what the lifespan was of that thing, but it's
20 years.
a 20-year building when it was put up in 1969. So I would expect that this building would last this town for 75 years or more, frankly. That's what I'd be looking for.
We did originally have a bias towards a pre-constructed steel building. And as we looked at the costs of different structures like the cement prefab buildings, the new energy code that went into effect January 1st made those buildings more expensive. And the wood option, which I was pretty, to be honest, dismissive of, but Dave Beach was very persistent, turned out to be more cost effective. We saw that in the town of Wilmington and one other town. And the reason was, with a wood building, you could easily meet the energy code that we have to meet. With the steel buildings, they have not been designed to meet the new energy code, and there's going to be some retrofitting, as I understand it.
They can meet the energy code, but it's now taken, you know, 10 years ago, I put up a ton of metal buildings. I can't do it anymore at the same price I can build the wood frame buildings with this size building, 1 story and the square foot size, just because we're going into more, basically it's an insulated metal panel with rigid insulation inside to get those energy code requirements that are now mandated, which weren't mandated until just recently.
So we've looked at the different options to try to get the most cost-effective building we can. Yeah.
One of the things, you know, Terry's touching on with the building fell in, heaven forbid, would be the equipment. If somebody was in there when it fell in, is another thing to be concerned about. But what I was going to bring up is the safety of the building itself. I mean, it cannot be in code. There's no way it can be in code for OSHA. And to put it into code, you'd be spending that much money to get it back up to where it ought to be. So that's just my observation of it.
You probably heard this before, I know you have, but we're anticipating a rather, well, somewhat of a bump in our taxes on the education side. So if that comes in the same year with this, I think people on fixed income are going to look at this.
I think they're going to have to look at both budgets very carefully, to be honest. I mean, we've had this conversation about should the town not do things because the school budgets are increasing. And it got to the point where we could never predict where the schools were going because they're running their shop and your select board is trying to run its shop. And so we just do the best we can, knowing that the school directors are doing the best they can. And, it's unfortunate that the feds have pulled back on special education, and maybe some kids that are in the district who need special education services, and that's having to hit on the school budget, but it is what it is. And if the voters think it's too expensive, that's the judgment of the voters. And if they think we really need to do this, it's overdue, then we'll go ahead and we'll do it as cost effectively as we can. Kenny?
Well, I appreciate what you guys have tried to do on this building. They do need a building, I'll grant you that. I think that you could cut it down to 6 bays, let some of the bays do double duty for whatever, and make it more cost effective, and whether it would be a metal building or whatever, you got to do what's the cheapest, because with the economy being what it is, most people don't know if they're going to have a job tomorrow. And you just got to do the best you can.
Yep. Thank you.
I was just kind of concerned about the point of all the trucks in heated garage. Because ours are outside and we can usually make them last quite a while for a couple 100,000 miles. I mean, can they be in cold storage in the pole barn?
Well,
And then just have a couple warm bays to work on them?
the trucks that go into the heated storage come in after every storm, and they have to be cleaned off, and all the sand and grit has to be cleaned out of the mechanisms.
Well, the problem is we have to mix salt with our sand because it will freeze no matter how you do it unless you mix a little bit of salt in with the sand. So you're always running salt through the chain beds, the spinners, and it gets all up underneath the body, obviously. And we're trying, like I said, we're trying to stretch the trucks to 10 years, which I think is possible if we can spray them off every time. Like today we come in at 4 a.m. and we got done doing our route at 11, and I had them spray all the trucks off because it was warm enough, because even the ones that sit outside weren't gonna freeze today. But if they outside, there's a lot of times we can't do the 1 tons because the chain beds will be froze up on us. So now with this building, we can pull all 6 of the plow trucks inside, and hopefully, I'm pretty adamant about it, we spray the trucks off every time we can. They'll be sprayed off every time we get done to last the 10 years while they're inside.
Will each guy they pull in spray their own truck?
Absolutely. Ron's our new employee, and he can attest to that. I'm pretty adamant about cleaning the trucks when they come back.
Gary, don't the crew work on their own trucks to some extent?
99% our trucks never go to a shop to get work done.
Billy?
Yeah, Lon, I just want to verify something real quick and make sure my understanding is correct, because I've heard a lot of concern about the utilities and the heated bays of the trucks, but you guys are proposing 4 different zones in the building, correct?
Yep.
So it's not like that entire building has to be heated at once. They could, in theory, have the heat going so they could spray the trucks off. Once the truck has dried off a little bit, that heat could either get turned down or turned off.
Well, I would say the truck base will be around 44 degrees.
Okay.
It will feel like 60 when you walk in there because it's radiant heat, but I don't believe the truck base will ever be over 44. My garage that I work on in the race cars in is 44 all the time, and it's more uncomfortable to work in it.
So this is not like we have the whole building running at 70 degrees. It's
absolutely
basically what I just wanted to clarify. Okay.
Other questions or concerns? Well, thank you all for coming tonight. We greatly appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
Okay, we're going to reconvene the regular agenda of the select board. We're still on, aren't we, Dan? Okay.
I forgot to download stuff. We don't have internet.
Yeah, we do have internet.
We do have internet?
I do.
Oh, you do?
No, well, yeah, there's,
You're not picking up internet.
you gotta go, it's go click on your thing to open the.
Oh my gosh, this sticker just does not want to stay on. My daughter is going to watch this on TV, and she's going to say...
That's the one.
All right, the next item is the liquor license renewal application for timetables. Can I have a motion to approve the license?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Remember that you have to sign both copies of this license when we send it around?
Okay, any questions or concerns about approving the license?
No.
Can you hear me well enough?
This is just a renewal, right?
Right.
Is that what that
This
is?
is just the renewal.
I didn't see it in the packet. It's a renewal?
In the packet.
Just a renewal.
It is? I must have missed it.
Annually or biannually, people have to get their liquor licenses.
I should probably wait till we vote on it to sign.
Any discussion of the motion? Bill, do you want to take a look at it before we vote?
They're our yearly applicant.
They in the country store?
In the country store.
of silly, but should this stuff all be answered?
And Benny's on hold.
The only question I have looking at this, Lon, is that it looks like there's a couple pieces to the application that aren't filled in. And I would hesitate to sign this as a board member without having it filled out completely.
Yep, you need to do that. The town clerk passed this over to us. Well, I think they need to, Billy's right, they need to answer those questions.
Okay. So it's the motion
All
withdrawn?
right, we're sending it back.
Is the motion withdrawn?
I'll withdraw the motion.
Okay.
Stuff like that.
All right, the brush truck bid opening.
You wanna come up? We only have two bids, one from Lucky's and one from Arrowhead. I will open the bid from Arrowhead Equipment.
Drum roll.
Drum roll. We have a total installed price, including removal of old body, at $14,000.
Wow.
Even? Even.
And we have several options. Oliver. Okay. Polished stainless steel undermount toolboxes for $1,500. Install chevron striping, if you would like, for $335. That would be installation of a chevron striping. And then $335. And then the last option is install RV electrical socket, $225. Trade-in of old rescue body, deduct $1,500. Okay? All righty.
Hey, Karen, you're writing really loud.
What is that? It's like picking up my, that's what, yeah, that's weird. Sorry, gang.
I'm sorry, I couldn't
I've got a
resist.
strong hand. And Lucky's. Okay. Your total price, including installation, is $7,945. Options: 18-inch by 18-inch by 30-inch aluminum toolbox, $550 each.
How many?
Each one is $550.
Yeah, but how many total?
As many as we want, I
As many
guess.
as you-
Those
I
are the
guess.
undermount boxes that, under the front of the box, between the wheels and the back of the cab.
Yep.
To utilize that space, it's empty and carry more.
How many boxes would you put on the truck?
The idea was for two
Okay.
8-footers on top of the box, and these two 30s that would be between the wheels and the cab underneath the box.
One on each side.
One on each side, one on each side.
So two of them.
Correct. 4 boxes altogether.
Okay.
Was that the only option that you?
No, he has, undermounted, they were $1,500. Install 2 board pockets.
Okay.
One on each side at rear of toolboxes at $80. Install 4 stake pockets on rear of body at $140. Trade allowance for Wilcox fire body, $2,000. So as you saw before, Lucky's is,
Both are within budget.
both within budget, and Lucky's is,
We'll have to look and make sure that everything.
exactly. They appear to be the low bidder. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank,
Yep.
yep, it does. Thank you for being so patient.
You know,
Yeah.
I probably got out of line by going to these guys directly first time, and they sent me prices. I have them here, she's got copies. We didn't look at them, none of those guys know anybody else's numbers, and we sent an apology letter to the three conditions that said, we need to do this the right way. We had two other people,
Yep.
contacted us, neither one did.
Right.
And so I think we've done it right this time. We had a pretty good set of specifications. I know both of these guys are gonna meet it, but there's, one guy's got a very nice vehicle, the other guy's got a utility vehicle, which will do everything we need to do. Let's make sure.
Yep,
Okay,
sounds good.
Thanks, Alan.
thank you.
Thanks, Solomon.
And thanks for being so patient waiting to get to that item. Okay, other business, Margie?
Well, are we doing a second reading of conflict of interest?
Nope.
Or we're holding?
Oh, we're not.
Okay. Yep.
There's only so many hours in the day.
Yep, no, it's good, I just wanted to, it's on there.
It'll get done.
Yeah, I know, I just wanted to be sure it's on the agenda.
It'll be on your next agenda.
I know.
I'm not going anywhere on that. I'm gonna finish that project.
That's good.
Okay.
You going to other business?
Okay, other business. Margie, do you have other business?
I guess mine would be under my report. We can do it either way.
Why don't we do it now?
Yeah. I have had a call from Chad Schmidt with a very important question with regards to what the role of the constables would be, or a constable, if somebody that is a fully certified police officer is elected as constable, and we do have a candidate with those credentials. I haven't responded to him. My own personal thought is that I don't see a change in the role of the constables because they've been authorized to only perform the statutory duties that one can perform without law enforcement certification and training. But it's a real concern of his, and I think that the next board probably need to meet with him.
Well, it
That's
sounds
all.
like speculation at this point.
It's speculation.
Yep, absolutely.
And,
I did have a conversation with the candidate. He seemed to indicate that the town would have to do a fair amount of planning for a constable, even a certified constable, to do law enforcement. So
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of meat there that has to be gone through, and you might as well wait and see what the election,
right, right.
Yep.
Right.
what the election result is. So what else do you have for us?
No, the only other burning issue, as I'm working with Marsh Engineering Services on recertification of the transfer station and landfill, is we have the oil, used oil in that tank, and I have been searching about for estimates, but now I've got fewer options for certified hazardous waste haulers because Clean Harbors just bought out Safety Clean. But I'm understanding that to get rid of that used oil, I just have to assure in certification that we're going to be able to manage getting rid of that oil for the certification process. So it's going to present a budget dilemma possibly before June 30th. I'd like to see if we can put it off till the next budget year.
When is the certification
By June.
paperwork? The end of June, June
We have to,
1?
I'd like to have us apply in March, and our certification runs through June. So the bigger question is going to be collection of used oil, and should that be written into the certification? And we've decided we don't want to.
Collect oil any longer due to
Right.
the issues that we've had.
Right, right.
I thought our policy has been, at least in the interim, not to collect oil.
That's right.
Yeah. But
So-
this is a new,
People,
this would actually be written into the
it would actually be
certification
written in.
plan for the.
Yeah, and we haven't been collecting it, though people still persist on dropping it off, and,
What, in bottles or something, leave it
Yeah.
on the side?
yeah.
What are the
Anyway.
options we're giving them right now? I mean, what are the suggestions we're giving them in terms
Take
of
it, just
how to get
take
rid
it
of it?
back to auto bodies,
Yep,
auto body shops, and there just aren't a lot of options. But the only hope that I have is that that $7,000 quote to actually empty the tank
Mhm.
and manifest that gallonage is that will come down because of this purchase of Clean Harbors,
Mhm.
of Safety Clean. They think they can do better.
Mhm.
So I just want to let you know that I'm going to wait and see what happens there. So we're trying to move along with that. And that was
okay.
and resolving how we're going to be doing that, apart from other business,
Okay, anything else, Marty?
for now.
Okay, and were the appointment positions advertised?
I have that down on my to-do,
Okay.
which I worked on tonight during the
Great.
meeting.
Okay,
Job
thanks.
descriptions and appointments.
And noticing which appointments will be coming up in
Right.
March. Okay. Okay, Craig?
Just one thing tonight. When do we, I'm just drawing a blank. When do we review, like, annual contracts? For example, last year, we awarded the contract for the mowing of the cemeteries. I believe we did a 1 year with a potential option to renew.
Mhm.
I'm just wondering when that matter comes. when
Now,
we-
I've actually got the ad ready to run, and I've been checking with Wills on what we need to request for insurance limits. I'm looking at this as preparation for the entire construction season.
Right.
Because I've got we've got our Bridge 35 contract, the deck replacement is coming up, we've already bid it, but we have cemetery mowing, the cemetery committee wants to meet and select as early as March 7. So we're right on top of that right now.
Okay.
Well, I'm not, we have an option. They decided
They
not.
decided not to renew.
Well, they have to, the select board decides whether we renew or not.
Right, they can give us a recommendation.
Okay, well, then their recommendation is not to renew.
Yeah, because they've had problems with quality,
Correct.
pretty significant ones.
Oh, I'm very aware of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
But, right, so it should come to the
Okay, so
select
that
board
should
when
be
you put it.
on an agenda.
Yeah, so we want to put it out to bid and not renew the contract. And this is the time of year when the road foreman should be deciding if he's going to put in a application for a culvert grant or a paving grant.
Oh, yeah,
Those are
we're going to be
the,
meeting with Terry.
those come up right about now, too.
Yep.
Other business, Craig?
Nope, that's it. That's all I have for tonight.
Okay, Carl?
No.
Okay. Billy?
Nope.
Karen?
Nope. I
Okay.
actually had one last, when the board is next going to meet.
That's what I was going to bring up. I was thinking, when is we should notice the organizational meeting?
I would suggest that we do that the week after town meeting, the following Monday.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be fine.
March 11th, is that?
Yep.
That
That makes
work for
sense.
Yeah,
And
that
then-
should be fun.
And then, as the vice chair, then Karen should chair that meeting, at least to get it going and run the elections. And then the other piece of that is you'll need the select board agreement.
Yeah.
Rules of procedure.
What's it called?
Policies and procedures.
No, it's our operating agreement.
Rules of procedure.
Rules of procedure. Yep.
Yep.
And then we were thinking about adding something to that we want to make sure we include. Just came up 2 meetings ago.
That was a long time
To the
ago.
rules of procedure?
Yeah, it had something to do with,
Oath.
right.
Oath
No.
of office?
No, we take an oath.
Right.
Oh, that was for David.
Okay, I'll get it. I think I have it in my notes. Okay. That's the only other thing I had. I'll get it to you, Marky, but we were going to make an amendment to the rules of procedure. I think it had to do with noticing meetings and special meetings.
Oh, was it with the holiday, with the national
That's
holidays?
right. It was for the
yeah,
3-day
right.
weekends.
Right.
Right, that's what it was.
That we wouldn't meet on the Monday. It would be the following Tuesday.
Right, so we want to,
Yeah.
can you, do you
Yeah.
have time to put that in
Sure.
the rough draft for the board? Okay. All right. The next item is the select board presentation. Any,
For town meeting?
yeah,
Mhm.
any suggestions? Guess compared to what we did last year?
My thought is that we're probably, or I make an assumption, are we going to focus a bit more time on the garage project? I'm assuming, which will be our focal point.
Right, we're gonna do, why don't we combine the two items? Because MSK is gonna do the same type of presentation at town meeting that they did tonight. I think we have to do something about the slide.
I do too. I mean, somehow they need to darken the lines because it's really difficult to see. It's really difficult, at least from a
Mhm.
distance, even with the lights on. I couldn't get that schematic. I really could.
Right.
It wasn't coming up at all.
Yeah, we have to recast those with more contrast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the projector or if it's just the slides themselves.
Jeff thought it was the projector, but
Uh-huh.
we'll have to do something
Yeah,
about that.
yeah. Yeah.
And then the budget presentation itself will be about 10 or 15 minutes.
Mhm.
That's what I'm expecting,
Mhm.
like it was last year.
Yeah, I mean, it's always, I think frankly, you do a great job with it.
Okay. All right, so I'll talk to MSK about the projector, see if we can get some improvement on that. And then let's see. I guess that's it, unless other people have suggestions. We have an executive session right after this. So why don't we just do the warrants if
Mhm.
everybody's ready? All right.
Can I bring up just one quick thing?
Mhm.
So it isn't last minute? Are we scheduled to have a meeting on the 25th of March? It's the third Monday of March.
Well, what happens is
Yeah.
at the organizational meeting, you'll decide when you're going to meet.
I mean, if we stuck with the same schedule that
Schedule,
we
that
have
would be
now,
a
we
regular
would.
meeting.
We
Okay.
would.
I'm going to ask to be made on the 22nd or somewhat later. That's
You'll have
All
to
right,
take
we'll
that,
talk about that on the
Okay.
11th then?
fine.
Okay.
because the next, you'll have a new board member, and that
Right.
person will want to weigh in too.
Right.
Sounds great.
All right, we have payroll warrant 31 and 33 for $256.80. It's a retirement warrant.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor of approving the retirement warrants 31 and 33 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Carries unanimously. Then we have a transfer warrant for $62,000, bringing monies to the reserve fund.
Motion to approve.
Well, let me just make sure.
That's not the appropriations?
No, it's
Okay,
just
okay.
the funding the reserves from the general fund.
Okay, correct.
Okay, so do we have a motion to approve the transfers?
Craig, and I'll second.
Okay, Karen seconded. Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor of transferring $62,000 to the designated reserve funds as per the last town vote signify by saying aye. Aye. Can you,
We turn them off?
They're very
Let's
strange.
take it off the table.
well, or just turn them down. They're, Margie,
I can't even turn them off.
he can,
Stop.
Craig?
All of you just stop.
All right.
Oh, boy, we've been put in our place.
Good job, Dan, way to take control.
Much better. So I can write without it being reverberating?
Yes. All right.
The table's hollow? It's true, it's true.
I couldn't hear everyone. So all those in favor of approving the transfers to the reserve funds as approved by the voters signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Carries unanimously. Did you vote on that, Caroline?
Yes, you did.
Okay, great.
I'll attest.
Okay, fantastic.
Is he doubting me?
Just couldn't hear you over here. We have check warrant 25. Wow, 3-pager. This is gonna be,
62.
oh, not so bad. $62,771.13.
Motion to approve?
Second.
$8,882 to Blue Cross Blue Shield, $1,200 in salt, $1,400 to the sheriff's department. Oh, probably close to $6,000 to Daly's, probably for winter sand, or sand. Delurie's got $2,600. Was that a truck repair?
Yes.
Yeah. Green Mountain Power was $1,100. Fuel's got $1,100. 2,500 to John Ray and Sons.
That's diesel.
Yeah. Cass was $7,400. Bond Council was $1,631. Mountain Air Assessor was $1,900. $1,200 for Crew Electric, $1,100 to the fire company. M. Taylor Purchases. Is that a reimbursement?
Yes.
Okay. And $10,000 to Vermont Surplus Property.
That's the loader, yeah.
Oh, that died, yeah. And Wells Communication, $2,000. That's about it. Any questions, comments, concerns?
One question I have is the, that CAS was the groundwater monitoring.
Is that what that's, no, I think it was Ericksville. Well, I had to go back.
Oh, I'm
Double
sorry,
check.
of course, that's what that was, for sidewalk.
It's a, yeah, it's an installment on the sidewalk.
Right.
Okay, anything else? There being nothing, all those in favor of approving check warrant 25 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstention? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, we've got retirement warrant. Is it? Yep, for $159.45. It's retirement warrant 3 DW.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor of approving payroll warrant 3 DW signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Carries unanimously.
That's a corrected payroll.
Then we have payroll warrant 33 for $7,617.43.
Motion to approve.
Second. Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor of approving payroll warrant 33 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Carries unanimously. One more. Okay, we have payroll warrant 34 for $9,441.51.
Motion to approve?
Second?
Any discussion? There being,
Some overtime in there from? Yes.
there
The
being
journal
none,
entry.
there being none, all those in favor of approving payroll warrant 34 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Carries unanimously. Okay, we have minutes for February 13th.
Motion to approve?
Second?
Two questions on those. First one is, under the attendance portion of it, I'm listed as being absent. It notes later on in the minutes that I came in at 8:10, but typically, isn't there a note up in the attendance
Right.
portion too, when somebody shows up late? So maybe that's amended.
Wait,
And
were you absent or late?
No, I think he should.
I was late.
So he should go up under members present and then maybe the time in parentheses after his name arrived at
Yeah.
8:10.
Well, wait, were you late for the select board meeting or the water board
Well,
meeting?
we're looking at the select board meeting,
This is
right?
select board, yeah, this is.
He was
the
late to the select
I
board
was
meeting.
late to the select board.
Okay.
I was not at the water board meeting.
All right, okay, thanks for the clarification.
Yeah, no problem. So I'd like to see that clarified up top on the minutes if we could. And then the other question I had was, under other business, it said, the DRB asked for a review of the candidates and appointment process, and I'm not sure what that meant. I don't recall. I know I know under other business I brought up that, that Kathy Jenislaw wanted to interview because I didn't know you guys had already discussed it. But I don't remember anything about a review of the process.
I thought that there was a question about, I thought Megan asked us about the alternate position. Is the board planning to fill the remaining alternate position, or are they waiting
okay.
until after
Gotcha.
town meeting?
Okay, that's what that was?
That's what
Gotcha.
that's what I think
Okay,
it
then
probably was about.
all right, then I'm fine with that. And the only thing I'd ask is
Yeah.
just if the attendance can be updated to reflect that I was late. I appreciate that.
Any other comments?
No?
Okay, there being none, all those in favor of approving the minutes as amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Yes?
One abstention. 401. Okay, I'd like to adjourn to executive session to consider a personal matter, namely the appointment of an alternate to the Development Review Board.
Make that motion?
Second.
Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor of going into executive session signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Carries unanimously. We are in executive session.